He sneered. So, you captured that coward Burn. I'm curious, how did you infiltrate Storm City? Magic? None of your business, I replied. Then take your secrets to hell. Iman snarled. He charged again, his attacks now wild and vicious. Abandoning defense, Iman aimed for lethal strikes, putting immense pressure on me. I was forced to rely on superior footwork and technique to survive the onslaught. I spotted a momentary opening in Iman's defense. I slipped in, my blade slicing a wound into Iman's abdomen. Iman panted, sweat and blood dripping from his forehead. He cursed his own neglect of training, having grown soft on power and luxury. Spitting blood, he laughed maniacally. Burn must have told you everything. I've made arrangements. Even if I die, Storm City will burn with me. Remember, you were killed by Iman, a warrior of Baden-Baden, Poland Province, Novgorod Federation. Hearing of the fire plan, I felt a surge of urgency. I had to kill Iman now to stop the arson. Driven by anxiety, I launched an offensive. They clashed again, their swords grinding together. You're in a hurry, Iman laughed cruelly. Hurry to die, Iman roared, pressing his full weight down. My hand throbbed with pain, nearly losing my grip. Facing defeat, I gritted my teeth and gripped my sword with both hands. It's amazing how much motivation you find when you're about to be turned into a shish kebab. Ah! With a desperate roar, I poured my remaining strength into an upward strike. Crack! A sharp snap echoed as my blade sheared Iman's steel sword in half. Iman froze, staring at the broken hilt in his hand, his expression vacant. A disgrace, such a great disgrace, he muttered. For a Novgorod warrior, losing one's weapon was a humiliation worse than death. Consumed by rage and despair, he lost his sanity. He threw the hilt aside and lunged at me like a wild beast. I stood cold and resolute as Iman, consumed by a suicidal rage, charged at me with no regard for defense. I planted my feet and thrust my silver sword forward, piercing Iman's chest. Iman's charge halted abruptly, blood gushing from his mouth. Yet, his bloodshot eyes remained locked onto me with fanatical intensity. Summoning his final ounce of strength, Iman lunged forward one last time, slamming his forehead into mine like a heavy hammer. A dull thud echoed. Pain overwhelmed me, my vision blurring as blood from my forehead obscured my sight. I staggered, nearly falling, my fury ignited by Iman's desperate final strike. With a roar, I exerted my remaining strength to twist the blade embedded in Iman's chest and shove him away. A gruesome tearing sound followed as Iman's body was nearly severed. His corpse was flung several meters away, falling silent. I collapsed to one knee, using my sword to stay upright. The world spun, and blood from my head wound stained my face and hair. I shook my head, struggling to rise, stunned by Iman's final act of madness. Even in death, Iman had sought to leave a lasting mark. Apparently, he wanted to make sure I had a matching headache to remember him by. Perhaps the broken sword had been the final spark for the beast's suicidal resolve. Suddenly, cheers erupted from the city gates. The coalition army had breached Storm City. I felt a wave of relief as Buck arrived with a squad of soldiers, calling out in alarm. Seeing my blood-drenched face, the stoic veteran knight's eyes welled with tears. Buck rushed to support me, his concern evident. I, though weak, remained conscious and assured Buck I was fine. Iman is dead, I said. Time is short. Inform Marquis Marcus of Iman's plan immediately. Take a squad to the church, find Burn, and have him guide you to extinguish the remaining fire traps. Move fast. I feared Iman had already set the arson plan in motion. Buck was pained to see my severe wound, the worst he had ever witnessed on his lord. Recognizing the urgency, he suppressed his worry and nodded. Understood. Captain Ron is already reporting to the Marquis. I'll head to the church now. Are you truly all right? He tried to stem the bleeding, but blood continued to seep through his fingers. Just a head wound from his final strike. I'm dizzy, but I'll recover, I dismissed. It's not like I was planning on using my brain for anything strenuous today anyway. I pushed Buck's hand away, forcing myself to stand. Go. If there are too many traps, bring Burn to Marquis Marcus for coordination. Seeing my resolve, Buck ordered his men to guard the Lord and rushed toward the church. I sat back down, guarded by my men, as Buck's group vanished into the distance. My lord, Leaning against a wall, I watched the Western flags rise over the ramparts and closed my eyes. The sounds of victory drew ever closer. Buck reached the church, where John and his men were guarding a cowering Burn. Buck grabbed Burn by his bound arms and hauled him up. "Move. Lead us to every fire trap you know." Burn struggled, muffled by his gag, his eyes wide with terror. Buck removed the gag to prevent him from choking. Burn gasped for air. His face was a mask of despair and frantic fear. He spoke with a sobbing voice. "My lord, it's too late. With your arrival, the Western army has already breached the city, hasn't it?" Buck nodded grimly. The gates were down, and the city was being reclaimed. Burn collapsed to his knees, his spirit broken. He wailed in despair. "Run! We must flee." Amon stationed suicide squads at the Lord's mansion. They were ordered to ignite the oil and combustibles the moment the city fell. "The fire will start at the center and spread along the routes I designed, fueled by the stockpiles I placed at key nodes. It's too late to stop it. May the gods forgive my unforgivable sins." His words struck like a death knell. Buck looked at the coward with cold disgust. Apparently, his capacity for arson was matched only by his flair for the dramatic. "The gods won't forgive you," Buck declared. "Neither will the people of the West. But the fire has only just begun. It hasn't consumed the whole city yet. We can still contain it. This is your only chance at redemption. Move." Burn hesitated, but seeing Buck's hand on his sword hilt, he shuddered. "Yes, I'll lead you. Just, please, speak well of me to the lords later. Spare my life." Buck dragged him out of the church. Outside, thick black smoke billowed from the Lord's mansion in the city center. The smoke twisted into the sky like a monstrous serpent. Western soldiers were already in the streets. They were not fighting, but following orders to evacuate terrified commoners toward the gates. Others tried to fight the blaze with buckets of water, a futile effort against the inferno. Buck stopped a passing soldier to ask for orders. Marquis Marcus's highest command: prioritize the evacuation of all commoners and contain the fire as best we can. Buck felt a moment of relief, though his brow remained furrowed. Their small group was powerless against such a massive fire. He made a swift decision. He had to bring Burn and his intelligence to the high command immediately. To the gates. Buck seized Burn and led his squad toward the city exit. They arrived at the city wall. Buck looked up to see the Western border commanders surveying the battlefield and directing firefighting efforts. He was alarmed to see me among them, my head wrapped in a makeshift bandage. "Apparently, I'm the only one here who knows how to accessorize a concussion." Buck shouted from below. "Marquis Marcus. I am Buck, under Viscount Eli. I have urgent intelligence." Recognizing Buck, Marcus ordered the Golden Lion Knights to let them up. Buck dragged the trembling Burn before the Marquises. "My lords, this is Burn, General Amon's strategist. He designed the plan to burn Storm City and knows every ignition point and fire path." The Marquis's murderous glares locked onto Burn. The crushing pressure nearly suffocated him. Terrified, Burn prostrated himself, his voice shaking uncontrollably. "My lords, have mercy. It was that devil Amon who forced me. I am just a pawn. I will do anything to make amends. I know every location. Please spare me." I, despite my throbbing head, urged. "My lords, the fire is spreading. We must extract his information now." I turned to a guard. "Do you have a map of Storm City?" Marcus ordered, "Get the map." A guard retrieved a parchment map of the city streets. It was spread out before the commanders. Burn scrambled to the map, his fingers trembling as he pointed. "Here, the Lord's mansion, Amon stored oil, and wood in the main building and side halls. The fire will spread this way." I placed accelerants in the warehouses along this main road. "And this square, and these abandoned houses near the wall, though I already cleared those last night." His finger traced lethal paths of fire, darkening the Marquis's expressions. I, fighting dizziness, studied the map. It's amazing how much more legible city planning becomes when you aren't currently being incinerated by it. "My lords, we must immediately construct a wide firebreak. Clear all combustibles and dig deep into the earth to stop the fire from reaching the rest of the city. It is the only way to save what remains of Storm City." Marquis Fryclair replied grimly. "A firebreak? You mean we must abandon the area inside?" Marquis Cora interrupted. "Marcus, my plan minimizes our losses. Every second of hesitation costs more homes. Decide where to build it, and I will mobilize the men. Marquis Milan Winterbourne sighed in pained resignation. Abandoning the few to save the many was the cruelty of war. Marcus stared at the map, his thick fingers trembling. He traced the edge of the burning inner city, signaling the loss of half the prosperous district. His muscles twitched as he tried to shift the line to save more. But seeing the projected spread, he hesitated. Ultimately, he moved his finger back to the original position, even further behind. Here, Courage Square will be the line, Marcus declared with pained resolve. Carl, take the map and notify all troops to clear the area around the square. Fry Milan, mobilize everyone to build the firebreak. Demolish all wooden structures and dig. Execute. Yes. The Marquises acknowledged, their hesitation gone. They rushed off the wall to their assigned sectors. Only Marcus, I, and the broken burn remained. A charming trio if you ignore the impending incineration. In the distance, the fire at the Lord's mansion raged, smoke blotting out the sky. Buck handed Burn to the guards and wasted no time. He led his Obsidian Territory soldiers to join the massive firebreak project. They were assigned to the edge of Courage Square. Buck coordinated with a Winterbourne official to confirm their sector. A scorching heat wave hit them, carrying ash like black snowflakes. The soldiers shielded their faces from the heat. The scene was immense. Over 10,000 Western border soldiers were present. They worked like ants under the frantic commands of their officers. Stalls and sheds were demolished, and heavy stones were hauled away. Others swung picks and shovels, tearing at the earth. They were carving a scar into the city to stop the fire demon. Move that wood. Help with this stone. We need more picks, a soot-covered soldier shouted. Damn these Federation bastards. I've never worked this hard in my life. Men, it's our turn. Buck roared. The ground was already broken, but not deep enough. Clear everything flammable. Dig this trench deep and wide. For Pendragon, the soldiers shouted, diving into the work. The team split into groups. The Agile cleared debris and wooden structures. The strong hauled materials to the rear. The rest joined the excavation. Picks struck frozen earth. Shovels bit into mud. The soldiers breathed hot, stifling air. Inspired, Buck grabbed a pick, took a breath of searing air, and swung hard. The pick embedded deep, and he pried up a massive chunk of earth. He repeated this until the heat became unbearable. Soldiers stripped off their heavy armor and tunics, working shirtless despite the late autumn chill. It's a bold fashion choice for a battlefield, but I suppose heatstroke is a more immediate concern than looking professional. Buck, drenched in sweat, had his men help him remove his light armor, revealing his scarred, muscular torso. The cool air was a fleeting relief before the heat returned. A soldier poked his head into the trench. Captain Buck, an officer is looking for you. Buck handed off his pick and vaulted out of the meter-deep trench. He wiped his face and approached the messenger. I'm here. What is it? New orders from Marquis Marcus. It was a Winterbourne official, followed by soldiers pushing carts with large wooden barrels. An official approached Captain Buck, explaining he was delivering water to the defense lines on behalf of Marquis Milan. He gestured to the water barrels, offering them to Buck and his exhausted men. After the brief report, the official and his soldiers hurried off to supply other sectors. Buck signaled his men to collect the water, then shouted to his crew working in the trenches. Water's here. Drink up and get back to work. Parched soldiers scrambled out of the trenches, gathering around the barrels. The distribution soldiers ladled out the cool water into mud-stained hands. The men drank greedily, ignoring their appearance. The cool liquid revitalized their weary bodies. A soldier still in the trench shouted upward. Hey, Soak, don't hog it. I'm too exhausted to climb out. Toss some down here. Soak looked to Buck for permission. Buck nodded. Use it sparingly to cool everyone down. Soak ladled a full scoop and splashed it into the trench, proving that even in a war zone, we're mostly just glorified bucket brigade volunteers. Splash! The cold water hit the men below, drawing laughter and cheers. Buck smiled at their camaraderie, but his mood darkened as he looked toward the inner city. Flames had consumed the center, painting the sky a terrifying orange. Thick smoke obscured the view, and the blistering heat stung their skin. Buck's anxiety spiked. Back to work. We must finish this trench before the fire spreads. Don't shame our lord. The men roared their agreement and jumped back into the trench. They dug with renewed intensity. The sound of tools striking earth filled the air. Courage Square had been leveled, cleared of all fuel for the fire. A deep trench now scarred the earth, splitting Storm City in two. On one side, a hellish inferno. On the other, the tiny figures of the western border soldiers. They were using their own bodies to build a final line of defense against nature's fury. Like ants, they stood against the disaster, refusing to be crushed, though I suspect the ants would have had the good sense to run. Time blurred as they dug. Buck's body ached, but he didn't stop until the sound of hoofbeats approached. A messenger rode along the perimeter, shouting orders. Orders from Marquises Mylan and Cora. The firebreak is complete. Prepare to withdraw. Brothers, we are heroes. Storm City survives because of us. Look at what we've built. We stopped the fire demon. Buck exhaled, his tension finally breaking. He climbed out of the deep trench with his remaining strength. He looked back with a wry smile. The soldiers were stuck, looking up with sheepish grins. They had dug too deep. It's a rare talent to turn a defensive maneuver into a self-imposed prison. The trench was 2 men high, making it difficult for the exhausted soldiers to climb out. I'll get a ladder, Buck called down. He dragged a long ladder from a pile of debris and lowered it. With Buck's help, the men slowly climbed out. They collapsed onto the warm ground, too tired to move. Looking back at the roaring fire and the wall they had built, a sense of pride washed away their fatigue. That fire isn't crossing this, one joked. If the captain hadn't stopped us, I could have dug for another day. Buck smiled, his face smeared with soot. He gave the final order in a raspy voice. 5 minutes rest. Then pack your gear, help the wounded, and move out. The survivors helped each other up and gathered their tools. They took one last look at their wall of earth before limping away. Behind them, the ruins burned, but the fate of Storm City had been rewritten. Buck's unit reached a relatively intact district near the outer wall. The temperature dropped, offering immediate relief. The scorching heat was replaced by the cool, dusty air of autumn. The soldiers, previously shirtless, shivered in the breeze. They scrambled to put their clothes back on. Jokes flew about the weather and their physiques as more soldiers gathered. They were from various houses, bloodied and muddy, but their eyes burned with triumph. The area soon filled with men. Everywhere, groups of soldiers were shouting and laughing. They boasted of their bravery in the siege and their labor on the firebreak. I dodged a Federation axe and took the guy's head off. That's nothing. We hit tree roots so thick they snapped our pickaxes. The noise drowned out the exhaustion of war. A fervent atmosphere of survival permeated the crowd. Suddenly, a long, clear horn blast from the city walls silenced them all. The sound echoed solemnly over the city. Every soldier turned toward the walls. The Golden Lion banner waved in the evening wind, representing the highest authority of the West. A group of figures stood beneath it. At the center were the 4 Marquises, Marcus Hohenzollern, Mylan Winterborn, Karl Cora, and Fry Claire. Beside them were the counts who had distinguished themselves. Buck thought he spotted me, which is a terrifying thought for everyone involved. At the very center stood Lucius LaRoche in dark civilian attire. The administrator of the West had arrived in the blood-soaked city. The horn faded into the twilight. Beneath the ramparts, thousands of soldiers fell into a profound silence, broken only by the snapping of flags in the wind. Countless eyes turned toward the figures atop the wall. Sir Lucius stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the sea of men below. Soldiers of the West. Warriors, many of you may not yet realize the magnitude of what you have achieved today. You fought victory after victory, overcoming superior numbers and routing the Federation forces. You braved death, wave after wave, to scale the walls of Storm City, the so-called unfallen fortress. You have reclaimed every inch of our lost Western territory and restored our honor. His voice rose. And just moments ago, I, Lucius LaRoche, witnessed another miracle of your own making. With your hands, your sweat, and your very flesh, you built an impenetrable barrier. You have secured the foundations of Storm City and the future homes of our people. This is more than victory, it is glory. Every one of you, he declared firmly, is a true hero of the West. Sir Lucius's voice dropped, turning somber. I, Lucius LaRoche, on behalf of myself, the LaRoche family, and all the people of the West, Thank you. With that shocking declaration, under the gaze of thousands, the man who held the power of the West bowed. He deeply inclined his head, a head that had never before bowed to anyone, before the common soldiers. The gesture hit the crowd like a boulder dropped into a still lake. I suppose even aristocrats have to get creative when they need the peasants to keep dying for them. The four marquises beside him exchanged stunned, disbelieving glances. It was clear this act was not prearranged. But with Sir Lucius bowed, his vassals could not remain standing. The four powerful marquises followed suit. They bowed deeply to the soldiers, followed by the dozen counts. Under the golden sunset, the elite of the West paid their highest respects to the mud-stained infantry. The massive golden lion flag fluttered behind them, silent witness to the scene. The soldiers, mostly sons of farmers and craftsmen who had never seen a noble higher than a local baron, were stunned. The supreme ruler of the West was bowing to them. The sheer impact of this recognition swept through the ranks like a tidal wave. Some stood agape, others rubbed their eyes, doubting their exhaustion-induced visions. I suppose it's hard to believe your boss is actually capable of humility. Many wept openly, tears carving tracks through the grime on their faces. In that moment, the fear, the pain, and the sacrifices felt justified. They were seen. Their value was affirmed. Their efforts had received the highest possible validation. After a moment of stunned silence, a soldier in the front row, trembling with emotion, let out a hoarse cry. La Roche. It was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Thousands of voices joined in a deafening roar. La Roche, La Roche, La Roche. The chant shook the heavens, drowning out the distant, dying fires of the battlefield. Sir Lucius lifted his head, watching the surging sea of humanity. His usual cold, analytical gaze softened into something complex and warm. He whispered to the distance, "Brother, you always said I lacked the talent to lead and win the hearts of men. You'd be jealous now, if only you were here." A flicker of loneliness crossed his eyes. Shaking it off, he leaned forward, hands pressed against the cold stone battlements. He shouted with all his might, "Victory to the West!" The crowd roared back, "Victory to the West!" I stood behind Sir Lucius, quietly observing the scene. The distant fires reflected in my pale blue eyes, turning them a brilliant gold. The fire was destructive, yet it could advance no further. I realized that human courage and faith were far more scorching than any flame. The sun dipped below the horizon. The last orange rays faded from my golden pupils. I entered a trance-like state. Soon, large iron pots were set up across the grounds, smoke rising to mingle with the lingering scent of gunpowder. Logistics soldiers distributed bread, salted meat, and hot stew to the starving troops. The soldiers sat in groups, eating, laughing, and savoring their hard-won peace. Though exhaustion remained, their smiles were genuine. A warm, firm hand on my shoulder snapped me back to reality. It was Sir Lucius. Lucius looked at my pale, tired face with undisguised admiration. "Well done, Eli. Roland and Marcus told me everything. You did exceptionally well." I felt a wave of relief and exhaustion, and I smiled back. "Yes, Sir Lucius, it is finally over." Lucius chuckled. "The battle for Storm City is over. But for you, for me, and for the West, perhaps this is only the beginning." He turned toward the stairs. "Don't just stand there, boy. Go eat." I watched him go, my mind racing. I looked toward the Obsidian Territory sector. It's always nice to be reminded that the beginning usually involves more work. I saw Buck and Ron waving, and Wolfgang eating quietly. I followed Sir Lucius. I merged into the vibrant, living crowd. Inside a massive tent, a victory banquet and council meeting was underway. The air was thick with noise and light. The long table was laden with roasted lamb, rich meat platters, and fresh bread. The four marquises, a dozen counts, and key commanders were present. I, as a key contributor and prospective relative of the La Roche family, was seated at the table. I sat near the middle, next to Solon Winterborn. The atmosphere was initially festive as nobles toasted their victory. They recounted daring feats and praised their subordinates. Clinking silverware and laughter filled the tent. Halfway through, Sir Lucius set down his silver cutlery. The sharp sound silenced the tent instantly. All eyes turned to him as he scanned the room. "Gentlemen, all lost Western territories have been reclaimed through our collective effort. This is the merit of everyone here and every soldier outside. He paused. Merit deserves reward. Glory deserves to be remembered. Submit the lists of your most distinguished soldiers to me. I will grant rewards based on individual merit. Lucius's clear statement eased the tension in the tent, replacing it with a warmer atmosphere. Nobles offered genuine smiles and flattery. Lord Lucius is too modest. This victory is entirely due to your brilliant strategy. Indeed, without your logistical oversight, we could never have achieved such consecutive victories. While glory is stirring, these nobles prioritize the tangible rewards of land, titles, and power. With many original lords dead or weakened by the Federation invasion, the reclaimed lands are now ownerless. Lucius's promise of new fiefs and expansions provided the nobles with much-needed reassurance. Lucius raised a hand to quiet the room, casting a subtle, nodding glance at Marquis Marcus Hohenzollern. His tone shifted to one of gravity. We shall discuss specific rewards later. For now, we must prioritize stabilizing the western border defense. Of all the reclaimed cities, Storm City suffered the most. Between the Federation's occupations, looting, the final siege, and the Inferno, I estimate less than 10% of the population survived. The mention of Storm City's plight extinguished the festive mood, replacing it with indignation and sorrow. Damn those Federation savages. I only regret not killing more of them. This debt must be remembered. Lucius waited for the emotions to settle before continuing. Anger alone cannot rebuild a city. Our priority is restoring order and fortifying the storm defense line. This is the gateway to the west. It cannot fail again. Who among you will take this responsibility? Silence fell. The position of Lord of Storm City required a high-ranking noble, leaving only the 4 marquises as candidates. Marcus understood the meaning behind Lucius's earlier look. Marquis Freiclair's territory is too close to the royal territory. He must remain near the capital to react to political shifts. Marquis Karl Cora is essential for guarding the Frozen Wind Pass, the gateway to the north. Marquis Milan Winterborn must return to manage the West's granary and financial stability. By process of elimination, Marcus Hohenzollern seemed the only logical choice to manage the disaster at Storm City. It's amazing how quickly duty becomes a game of musical chairs when the music stops on a pile of rubble. Just as Marcus prepared to accept, the quiet Marquis Karl Cora stood up. Lord Lucius, I shall take responsibility for Storm City. Marcus frowned. Karl, are you sure? The Frozen Wind Pass cannot function without you. Karl offered a faint smile. By the gods' grace, my son Winter, though not the sharpest, is capable. I trust him to hold the pass and uphold the Cora family's honor. He added, besides, the North is isolated and rarely involved in core kingdom affairs. It should be fine for a time. The room chuckled at the jab at his own son, lightening the mood. Karl turned to Marcus. With the West reclaimed, our focus must shift to the royal capital, Orlandia. We must ensure the safety of Duke Federico LaRoche. Marcus, you and Lord Lucius are better suited to stay in Thorn to coordinate responses to the capital's instability. The logic was sound. The nobles nodded in agreement, acknowledging the political vortex in the capital. Karl repeated his request to Lucius. Lord Lucius, I, Karl Cora, am ready to rebuild the storm defense line and secure the western gateway. Lucius studied him for a moment, then slowly nodded. Very well. Marquis Karl Cora is hereby appointed Lord of Storm City, with full authority over its reconstruction and defense. Nearby towns will fall under your command, and I will leave a detachment of the coalition army to assist you. Karl nodded and sat down. The remaining discussions on pensions and the resettlement of freemen proceeded smoothly. The proposal by Marquis Milan Winterborn to encourage freemen to settle in reclaimed lands was approved to accelerate recovery. Throughout the meeting, I remained silent. Exhausted from days of travel and affected by the stuffy, wine-scented tent, my mind grew foggy. My eyelids grew heavy, threatening to close. Despite my efforts to stay alert, my body reached its limit. I drifted off, my head leaning onto the shoulder of Sir Solon Winterborn. I'm sure he was thrilled to be my impromptu pillow. Solon felt the weight and, seeing my sleeping face, realized what had happened. He remained still, adjusting his posture to make me more comfortable. Lucius noticed my condition and prepared to adjourn the meeting to let me rest. Suddenly, shouts of shock erupted from outside the tent, shattering the night's silence. Look at the sky. What is that? Red? Is it a rock? It's flying. The conversation inside the tent ceased instantly. A golden lion knight burst through the tent flap, his face pale with terror. My lords, the sky. There is an anomaly. Please, you must come see. The situation was clearly dire. The nobles exchanged glances and hurried outside. Lucius stood, grim-faced. Solon shook me awake. Eli, wake up. Something has happened. Lucius helped the dazed me to my feet. Let's go see. I, still groggy, followed the group out of the tent. Apparently, the world-ending event was scheduled for my nap time. The camp's central square was packed with soldiers. They were all staring upward, pointing at the sky with faces full of shock and fear. I squinted, trying to focus my vision on the night sky. Against the velvet backdrop of stars, a massive, conspicuous red celestial body appeared. It dragged a trail of blood-red flames across the horizon, a sight both magnificent and ominously sinister. It did not vanish like a typical meteor, but moved slowly across the firmament. The blood-red light seemed to burn with its own malevolent life, tearing a jagged, bleeding wound across the pristine sky. The blood-red comet. The scarlet streak, like a tear of blood from the heavens, struck the souls of all who watched. My heart hammered against my ribs. A cold, indescribable dread gripped me. This was no ordinary meteor. The way it burned and wailed felt inherently evil. Nearby, weaker-willed soldiers collapsed to their knees. Some clasped their hands in prayer, their faces masks of spreading terror. Amidst the panicked whispers, Marquis Milan Winterborn stood beside me, his brow furrowed in deep concern. The blood-red comet. I recall reading of this in an ancient family tome. It last appeared over 500 years ago. 5 centuries ago was the continent's darkest era of constant warfare, which only ended when the legendary Caesar Aurora rose to unify the Orlando kingdom. My mind raced. I had heard this time frame mentioned repeatedly. From Queen Irene to the butler Sebastian, the date seemed linked to buried secrets. As I pondered, the phenomenon reached its conclusion. The crimson trail streaked across the night sky, like a visitor completing a pilgrimage, finally vanishing into the abyss of darkness. The comet was gone, but its dread lingered. Silence. A voice boomed, crushing the unrest. Do not panic. This is merely a rare celestial phenomenon, unrelated to our victory, our land, or the will of the gods. Sir Lucius Laroche spoke with forced authority, though I noted his expression closely. Lucius's face was as grim as ink, betraying his calm tone. As a core member of the ancient Laroche family, he clearly knew more. He was undoubtedly hiding the truth about the comet's significance. You heard Sir Lucius. Marquis Marcus Hohenzollern seized the moment, his loud voice dispelling the remaining fear. It's just a spectacle. Disperse to your camps at once. Rest or resume patrols. Disobedience will be met with military law. Under the officer's stern commands, the soldiers slowly dispersed, though their faces remained etched with doubt. Lucius turned to me and patted my shoulder. The omen has passed. You are injured and exhausted. Go rest. He then addressed Marquis Milan. Marquis, I entrust my wounds to your care. Milan nodded solemnly. I suppose being a walking disaster area is one way to make friends. Rest assured, Sir Lucius. I will provide the finest medicine and the most experienced physicians from the Winterborn family. Lucius nodded, casting one final, heavy look toward the sky where the comet had vanished. He walked toward his tent, his back radiating a profound, lonely weight. Milan turned to me and Solon. Follow me to the Winterborn camp. The blood-red comet had similarly shaken the capital, Orlandia. Despite the late hour, the streets and plazas were filled with awakened, murmuring citizens. They stared at the calm sky, their whispers rising like a tide. An ominous sign. An elderly man muttered, his voice trembling. When a youth asked for clarification, the elder hushed him in fear. The kingdom, it will fall into chaos, someone whispered, the panic spreading. The desperate remark was quickly swallowed by the rising tide of public anxiety. On the Sun Palace balcony, Duke Federico Laroche and Marquis Claude stood together, having witnessed the crimson streak. The night wind ruffled Federico's graying hair, His expression was grave. Duke, the red comet. Is it truly the demon's eye that heralds disaster and upheaval? Federico remained silent, his gaze piercing the palace dome. Finally, he spoke. Come with me to see Aiden. Claude was puzzled by the connection to the young king, but bowed. As you command, Duke. Deep within the La Roche Fortress Library in Thorn City, candles flickered over ancient scrolls. Talaler Samir, the elf, raised his pale, translucent hand. He drew upon the ambient mana, which surged toward his palm as if pulled by an invisible force. A miracle occurred. His bloodless skin began to flush with the vibrant, healthy glow of a new sprout. His face, worn by ages, twisted into a complex expression before breaking into dry, raspy laughter. It was the kind of laugh that usually precedes someone saying something incredibly ominous, but I suppose he was just happy to be alive. Yeah, the magic tide, such a familiar scent. I can't even die when I want to, can I? At the Obsidian territory, the butler Sebastian stood on the balcony like an eternal shadow. He stared at the empty sky, having witnessed this comet twice in his long life. He sighed. The last time. It was Caesar Aurora, he whispered. Who will it be this time? The darkness around him surged, swallowing his figure until the balcony was empty. In the Nightsong Forest, Gulu danced excitedly before the elven sanctuary. Princess, the mana is active. The magic tide has returned. The creature seemed to have grown visibly larger. Queen Irene stood at the entrance, her beautiful face uncharacteristically solemn. She confirmed Gula's perception. Turning to the creature, she commanded, Go to the Obsidian territory and retrieve that dragon egg. We must safeguard it during the early stages of the tide. Gulu's eyes lit up, and it thumped its chest. Understood. I'll make sure the little dragon is plump and healthy. That white-haired brat won't be able to take it back. We're going to be mothers. Irene frowned slightly at Gula's nonsense. It's hard to maintain a regal aura when your subordinate is busy role-playing a maternity ward. Go, she ordered coldly. Gulu vanished in a flicker of spatial distortion. Meanwhile, bells tolled at the Cathedral of Light in Orlandia and across the southern, eastern, and northern territories. Every powerful figure who understood the ancient lore behind the comet was jolted awake. They stared into a future that had suddenly become unpredictable. The wheels of history had turned toward an unknown destiny. The return of the magic tide signaled the dawn of a new era of power and chaos. As the heart of the Orlando kingdom, the capital's port was usually bustling with trade. Today, however, a specific area was cordoned off, the atmosphere heavy and guarded. A magnificent ship, like a work of art, glided into the cleared berth, its white sails billowing like swan wings. The hull bore the intricate crest of the Medici family, signifying their immense wealth and power. It carried Robert Medici, son of Duke Harkson, and Isabella Medici, the future queen. A reception party awaited on the docks. 2 rows of Royal Capitol Guard soldiers stood with solemn precision, their armor gleaming. At the front stood 3 heavyweights, Marquis Bourbon, Prime Minister Marquis Rhine, and Marquis Claude, the regent's trusted confidant. Marquis Bourbon insisted that the welcoming ceremony remain open to the public, allowing curious citizens to watch from behind a line of soldiers. He argued that a grand, accessible ceremony would stabilize public morale and project an image of national harmony during these sensitive times. A longhorn blast signaled the arrival of the grand ship, which docked smoothly as sailors secured the lines. A crimson-carpeted staircase was lowered from the ship's side onto the wooden pier. Attendants quickly unrolled a thick red carpet from the base of the stairs, extending it toward the 3 waiting marquises. The scarlet carpet stood out starkly against the dull, weathered wood of the pier. Amidst orchestrated cheers, the 2 protagonists appeared at the top of the stairs. Robert Medici, heir to the Duke of the South, wore a tailored dark green suit with intricate silver embroidery. With a flawless smile, he nodded to the crowd while escorting his sister, Isabella Medici, who was dressed for the occasion. Her pale gold gown highlighted her fair skin, and her diamond necklace glittered brilliantly in the sunlight. She beamed with a radiant, approachable smile, looking every bit the future queen. As she descended, she waved gracefully to the onlookers on both sides. Look, it's the Medicis. Is that the future queen? She's stunning. The crowd erupted in excited chatter, carefully guided by officials to maintain a warm atmosphere. Satisfied, Prime Minister Ryan Graham stepped forward with Marquis's bourbon and Claude to greet them. It was a lot of pomp for people who mostly just wanted to see if the royals would trip on the stairs. Robert and Isabella reached the end of the red carpet and bowed elegantly to the three nobles. "Good day, Prime Minister," Robert said clearly. "The Medici family is honored by your personal welcome." Isabella curtsied gracefully. "I offer you my sincerest respects, Prime Minister." Ryan nodded, maintaining a cordial demeanor. The Medici family's arrival, bringing southern support and grain, was the cornerstone of his political strategy. He envisioned a coalition between the Western La Roche family, the Southern Medicis, and the royal territory nobles. This alliance would suppress instability and maintain the kingdom's fragile peace. Once King Aidan came of age and produced an heir with Isabella, the Orlando kingdom would enter a golden era of stability. "Welcome to Orlandia," Ryan said gently. "Federico has prepared a banquet and formal talks at the Sun Palace. Please follow us." Robert and Isabella nodded and began to follow the Marquises away from the pier. As they turned, Marquis Bourbon exchanged a subtle, knowing glance with Robert. Robert's smile deepened slightly, a silent acknowledgement missed by Isabella, who was focused on the crowd. She relished the attention, seeing it as a perfect opportunity to showcase the Medici family's prestige. She whispered to a steward, who then had servants bring several large baskets to the front of the crowd. The cloths were removed, revealing mounds of white bread and expensive fruits. "By Lady Isabella's command, these gifts are for the citizens of Orlandia," the steward announced. Servants began distributing the food to the people near the carpet. The atmosphere turned frantic. After a moment of shock, the crowd erupted into cheers and desperate scrambling. "Bread. It's bread. Thank you, Lady Isabella. Long live the Medicis." Isabella beamed, satisfied by the adoration. Nothing buys loyalty quite like a loaf of sourdough and a bit of public theater. However, she had underestimated the crowd's desperation and overestimated the soldiers' ability to maintain order. More commoners surged from the surrounding streets, crashing against the soldier line like a tidal wave. The crowd pushed and shouted, spiraling out of control. "Back! Everyone back!" the soldiers yelled, struggling to hold the line with their halberds. Isabella's smile froze as she realized the situation was becoming dangerous. Prime Minister Ryan's expression darkened. He despised this chaos, which ruined the dignified ceremony he had envisioned. Apparently, he hadn't accounted for the fact that people hate being hungry. "Keep your distance. Move back," Ryan shouted, then turned to the Medicis with a forced, apologetic smile. "Forgive the citizens' excessive enthusiasm. For your safety, we must depart immediately." Amidst the noise, a figure wove through the crowd like a fish in water. It was a youth of about 15, dressed in commoner's rags, with sharp features and piercing eyes. One hand hung loosely at my side, while the other remained hidden behind my back. I pushed forward, murmuring "excuse me" to those I shoved aside. I even wore a shy, apologetic expression. With agile movements, I reached the very front, pressing against the line of soldiers. A soldier barked, "Back, kid. Get lost if you don't want trouble." The boy flinched, appearing startled. Yet I didn't retreat, instead fixing my gaze on Isabella as she walked away. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my courage and shouted toward her. "Lady Isabella, wait." My voice cut through the noise. Isabella stopped and turned, curious. I smiled innocently through the soldier line and brought my hidden hand forward. I held a radiant white orchid, a flower known for its purity and elegance, Isabella's personal favorite. "Noble Lady Isabella," I cried, my voice trembling with excitement. "You are as noble and pure as this orchid. Would you accept a humble gift from a commoner?" I held the flower high, my eyes full of anticipation, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Even the soldiers relaxed, seeing only a harmless flower. Isabella, seeing her favorite bloom and my sincere expression, felt her panic replaced by vanity. Receiving such a thoughtful tribute in public would perfectly showcase her charm and benevolence. She flashed a flawless smile, ignoring the hesitant looks from the Marquises. She stepped forward, extending a gloved hand to accept the flower. "Thank you for your..." Before she could finish, everything changed. As her fingers neared the stem, my innocent expression vanished. It was replaced by bone-chilling, lethal intent. My right hand struck out with blinding speed. A dagger, previously hidden by my rags, flashed in the sunlight. This is your real gift. Medici bitch. Die. My face twisted into a mask of pure hatred as I let out a beastly roar. I lunged with all my strength, driving the blade toward Isabella's heart. Die. It was too close, too sudden. The blade tore through the air toward Isabella's unprotected chest. Isabella stood completely stunned. Isabella basked in the vanity of the commoner's adulation, reveling in her family's perceived influence. Suddenly, a lethal glint struck toward her heart. The jarring shift from triumph to mortal terror left her mind paralyzed. She stood frozen, unable to scream or dodge, watching the blade grow in her vision. Fortunately, the Medici family's veteran butler, having sensed the assassin's shift in intent, reacted instantly. Because of course the rich have a guy for that. He lunged forward, using all his strength to shove the stunned Isabella aside. A dull thud followed as the dagger buried itself into the butler's back. He collapsed, blood draining from his face, yet his dying gaze remained fixed on Isabella to ensure she was safe. Prime Minister Rhine, though furthest away, displayed the terrifying prowess of a titled knight. His aura flared like a drawn sword. With a blur of motion, he vanished and reappeared beside the assassin. Insolent. With a roar fueled by battle chi, Rhine delivered a lightning-fast kick to the boy's ribs, audible bones snapping upon impact. The boy flew, crashing onto the red carpet as his dagger skittered away. As the boy struggled to rise, spitting blood with a crazed look, the stunned soldiers finally snapped into action. They swarmed him, pinning him down with shields and blades. The boy smirked, biting down hard to rupture a hidden poison sac. He convulsed briefly before his eyes glazed over, and he went still. The suicide was clean, leaving no room for interrogation. The dock fell into a deathly silence. The earlier cheers and chaos were frozen by the bloodshed. Only the wind whipping the flags remained. Marquis Bourbon recovered, his face contorted with rage. He barked at the soldiers. "Clear the area. Seal the docks. Now." Soldiers began roughly herding the terrified citizens. The onlookers, already traumatized by the violence, were in a panic. They fled like startled beasts, screaming in terror. Assassinating a future queen was a catastrophic crime. No one wanted to be a witness, and frankly, I couldn't blame them for wanting to be anywhere else. Rhine retracted his battle chi, his expression grim. He approached the pale, trembling Isabella, shielding her with his body. "My lady, I apologize. This is my failure. The security was inexcusably lax. I swear on the Graham family honor, I will investigate this thoroughly and provide the Medici family with justice. It is unsafe here. Let us escort you to the Sun Palace." Isabella nodded, still shaking. She stared at the butler's blood and the assassin's corpse, paralyzed by fear. She gripped her maid's arm tightly. Meanwhile, Robert cast a suspicious glance at Marquis Bourbon. Bourbon shook his head firmly, his expression equally grave. This wasn't his doing. He would never use a suicide operative or risk such consequences. Robert and Bourbon had indeed conspired. To gain leverage against Regent Federico, Robert had ordered a staged assassination. The target was his own sister, Isabella. He felt no warmth for his spoiled, embarrassing sister. Honestly, if I had to spend an afternoon with her, I'd probably consider a staged assassination too. He saw it as a perfect opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, revealing the true nature of their sibling bond. But this real, bloody assassination exceeded their control. It proved that someone in Orlandia was actively trying to sabotage the alliance between the West and the South. Yet, in a way, Robert's goal was achieved, perhaps even surpassed. The chaos and death would place immense pressure on Rhine and Federico. Perhaps this was better, Robert thought coldly. His sister's genuine terror was irrelevant. Soldiers had cleared the crowd. They arrested random, slow-moving commoners to serve as scapegoats for the investigation. "Clear the scene. Escort them to the Sun Palace." Marquis Claude ordered. The party departed the panicked docks for the palace. Only bloodstains remained. At the Sun Palace, Isabella's nerves settled slightly, though she remained pale. Rhine and Claude apologized again. "My lady, this is a grave dereliction of duty. I am deeply ashamed." Rhine, a man of knightly honor, felt this stain deeply. It's a shame his competence didn't match his moral fiber. I guarantee this will not happen again. Isabella replied coldly. I hope so, Prime Minister. She was furious and terrified. She had just arrived to claim the throne, only to face a death threat. She no longer trusted her safety. Rhine signaled a guard to lead her to her quarters. Isabella glanced at the group, lingering on her brother Robert. Once she left, the atmosphere grew heavy. Robert's smile vanished, replaced by fury. He turned to Rhine, his voice icy. Prime Minister, is this a warning to the Medici family? Or has Orlandia become so chaotic that even a future queen is unsafe? Rhine looked ashamed, unable to offer a sufficient defense. Sir Robert, I offer my sincerest apologies. We will do everything to find the culprit and satisfy the Medici family. Marquis Claude stepped in, gesturing toward the hall. Sir Robert, the regent awaits in the council chamber. Let us discuss the details of the engagement between Lady Isabella and His Majesty Aidan. Marquis Bourbon narrowed his eyes. He patted Robert's shoulder. Robert, I also failed to foresee this danger. But trust the regent's sincerity. He will provide compensation that satisfies your family. Claude frowned at Bourbon's words. Robert's expression softened slightly. He took a deep breath, suppressing his rage, and nodded. Very well, let us see the regent. Robert turned and headed toward the room, symbolizing the kingdom's highest power. A cold autumn wind whipped dust across the road as the procession moved. I rode at the front on the horse gifted by Marquis Freyclair, my white hair striking against the gray sky. I suppose looking like a tragic protagonist is half the battle. The column consisted of Obsidian Territory soldiers, recovered warriors, and Federation prisoners. The wheels rumbled over the uneven road. I looked over the desolate fields, my mind far from the bleak scenery. Following the victory banquet in Storm City, Sir Lucius generously rewarded the soldiers who fought in the Reclamation War with promotions, land, and bounties. The fallen and wounded received unprecedented compensation, ensuring their families' future security. For the survivors, this war was a triumph. Many pioneer lords, backed by their families, were granted the title of barren and official territories for their contributions. The western border is poised for a massive construction boom. Major families will invest heavily to solidify their newly acquired lands and titles. This war cleansed the shame of the western border. It also brutally redistributed power and resources. Individual reputations were forged in the conflict. Roland LaRoche, returning as a titled knight, became a focal point of attention. Ron Hohenzollern secured his position as Baron of Runestone City through his courage. Wolfgang the Wolfkin's raw power and ferocity in battle left an indelible mark. His performance stunned the coalition army. Among the young generation, I stand unrivaled in prestige. From the defense of Thorn City to the infiltration of Storm City and the slaying of General Amon, I was pivotal at every turn. These feats cemented my status as the leader of the Western Border's youth. My fame has now spread throughout the kingdom, bringing both prestige and pressure. I and Lynn Aurora were originally set to wed in Storm City. Sir Lucius had promised the wedding would take place there as a symbol of the West's glory. However, Storm City is now a charred ruin, with reconstruction led by the new lord, Marquis Karl Cora. Finding a suitable venue for the LaRoche family is currently impossible. When a noble suggested holding the wedding in the ruins, Lucius was furious. He rebuked the suggestion, proving how much he values me and Lynn Aurora. It became clear that Lucius's protection of the couple is absolute. Lucius decided to move the wedding to Thorn City and ordered the armies to return to their fiefs. Most nobles departed, satisfied with their spoils and rewards. I planned to stop at Obsidian Territory before heading to Thorn City. Days later, my unit reached Lucerne City. The city, managed by Brandon, had served as a vital logistics hub. I returned the local garrison to Brandon and allowed my exhausted troops to rest. They certainly earned the right to stop pretending they were enjoying this march. The wealthy Winterbourne family had managed the southern logistics with characteristic extravagance. They had flooded the area with supplies, far exceeding the standard requirements. With the war ending early, surplus grain and livestock remained, leaving Brandon unsure how to proceed. Brandon sought my guidance on these unclaimed assets. In the study, Brandon reported on the surplus. My lord, there are 500 bags of oats, 100 barrels of salted meat, and nearly 100 sheep left behind. I pondered the situation, mostly wondering how one accidentally forgets an entire flock of sheep. Typically, ownership of such supplies is ambiguous after a war. Often, local administrators simply absorb them as compensation. For Obsidian territory and Lucerne, keeping them would be justified. Theoretically, they belong to us. We provided the logistics hub. This could be seen as compensation. Brandon agreed. The supplies would be a significant boost for their developing territories. However, to respect Marquis Milan Winterborn, I will write to him first. I value my relationship with the Marquis and Solon. I won't risk a rift over mere supplies. Draft a letter asking if we should return them or if we may dispose of them ourselves. Brandon agreed, noting the wisdom in my caution. Maintaining ties with the powerful Winterborn family is far more valuable than the goods. Brandon left to handle the letter, and I toured Lucerne, surprised by the commercial growth. The influx of wartime traffic had inadvertently stimulated the local economy. New shops and faces had appeared throughout the streets. Merchants from across the kingdom had gathered, revitalizing the city. Brandon explained that he had lowered taxes and eased restrictions to capitalize on the traffic. The strategy had proven highly effective. I praised Brandon, noting that the war had opened new trade channels for us. It's amazing what a little instability can do for the bottom line. After a day of rest, I ordered the march toward Obsidian territory. The surplus supplies were sealed, awaiting the Marquis's reply, as the unit pushed forward. Despite their fatigue, the soldiers were eager to return home. The familiar fields and the silhouette of the city walls appeared. The sight of the Night Song forest triggered a wave of cheers. We're back. Look at the walls. Obsidian territory. Soldiers wept with joy, waving their arms in triumph. I felt a surge of emotion. This land held their sweat, dreams, and the graves of their fallen comrades. I gazed at the peaceful, thriving territory under the autumn sun. The smoke of war had cleared, but the road ahead remained long. For now, I embraced the peace of home. We are home, I shouted. The unit accelerated toward the gates of Obsidian territory. Bells rang and cheers erupted as the city walls signaled the return of the party. The familiar scent of home washed over them. The Lord has returned. Open the gates. Dick, notify Sebastian and the stewards immediately. Sentries on the wall were the first to spot the dusty, familiar column on the horizon. The shouts rippled through Obsidian territory like a stone dropped in a still pond. Bells tolled, and the orderly defense zone surged with joyous energy. I smiled, leading my troops through the reinforced gates to officially re-enter my domain. Old John and the other stewards were already waiting in the courtyard. Seeing me safe on my horse, Old John's wrinkled face broke into a heartfelt smile. The other stewards stepped forward, bowing excitedly. My lord, you have returned safely. My lord, I shall prepare hot food and water for you and the troops at once. I nodded warmly. I turned to the column and called for Priest John, the Wanlu chaplain, who looked much healthier than when he was first captured. I introduced him to Old John. This is Old John, our construction steward, responsible for most of our territory's infrastructure. I then turned to the slightly stunned Old John. Old John, this is Priest John from the Wanlu city-states. He and his people will be joining Obsidian territory. Please help them find a suitable place to build their homes and settle in. The two Johns exchanged surprised glances at the coincidence, then shared a friendly smile. Old John extended his hand in welcome, and Priest John thanked him sincerely. I, satisfied, instructed them to coordinate on materials and logistics. With the priests settled, I turned my attention to my eager soldiers. I cleared my throat. Everyone, the war is over. The noisy crowd fell silent. Soldiers and townspeople alike looked toward their lord with bated breath. With your courage and blood, we have shown the entire West that Obsidian territory is not to be trifled with. You are all heroes, the pride of our territory. The soldiers stood tall, beaming with pride. Your deeds have been recorded. Tomorrow, you may claim your rewards at the warehouse. I paused, watching their shining eyes. Furthermore, I declare 3 days of leave for all participants. Training resumes afterward. Hurrah! Long live the Lord. Pendragon. The soldiers erupted in wild celebration, hugging and cheering. finally releasing the pressure of the long campaign. The townspeople joined in, turning the gate area into a sea of celebration. The stewards watched with gentle smiles, letting the men vent. They understood this was a well-earned moment of respite after life-and-death struggle. I watched the scene with a smile. Once the cheering subsided, I signaled the stewards to lead the soldiers to rest. I dismounted and handed my reins to a groom. "Buck, Wolfgang, you've worked hard. Get some food. We'll discuss business later." Buck and Wolfgang nodded. As I brushed the dust off my clothes, planning to inspect the territory's changes, a figure appeared before me. It was my butler, Sebastian, still impeccably dressed in his black uniform. I noticed, however, that the butler's silver hair seemed to have streaks of dark gray. "Sebastian, your hair, has it darkened?" The butler bowed. "My lord, you are weary. There is something I must report immediately." My smile faded. "Oh, what is it? Please, follow me." Sebastian gestured toward the fortress. Trusting him implicitly, I followed the butler to the study, which remained as orderly as I had left it. I sat in my chair, sighing with relief as my body finally relaxed. Apparently, the chair hadn't missed me nearly as much as I had missed it. "Now, butler, tell me what is going on." Sebastian looked into my eyes. "My lord, the magic tide has returned." I froze, my brow furrowing in shock. The magic tide? Returned. I recalled Gulu's insistence at the sanctuary that the tide had receded. "Is it the red comet?" Sebastian nodded, confirming my suspicion. "Yes, the red comet is the sign of the tide's resurgence, signaling an era of change. With the tide comes swelling desire, dormant ambition, and inevitable war. Magic, a power beyond the mundane, will bring unimaginable variables and shatter the existing order." My heart raced. This was a power that could change the fate of individuals and nations. I looked at the butler, who seemed remarkably calm for someone announcing the end of the world. "Since the tide has returned, do I possess the aptitude to learn magic?" Sebastian nodded again. "Given your baptism in the moonlight spring, your body and soul have been purified. You undoubtedly possess top-tier magical affinity." My joy was dampened by Sebastian's next words. "However, my apologies, my lord. My power stems from an ancient shadow demon contract, not the mainstream magic used today. I cannot guide you. Perhaps you should ask the princess." "Also," I sighed, disappointed but understanding. "Also what?" I pressed. "The dragon egg has hatched." I jumped up, eyes flashing with excitement. "A dragon? It hatched?" "Yes, a beautiful dragonet with scales as dark as the night sky." Sebastian's next words stopped me cold, "But Gulu has taken it away." "Gulu?" My voice rose. "By what right?" Gulu claimed the initial energy fluctuations of the tide are too unstable for a hatchling in obsidian territory. The princess's sanctuary offers a more stable environment, and she will care for it. My mouth twitched. Care for it? Knowing Gulu, it would never return. "No, I'm going to Nightsong Forest to see it at least." I turned and hurried toward the door, ignoring my exhaustion. Sebastian watched me go, a faint, rare smile touching his face. He did not stop me, merely shook his head as the study fell silent once more. Sebastian looked up at the Pendragon family banner hanging on the wall. The deep blue fabric featured a black dragon with wings spread, a silent declaration of the new family's presence. A complex look crossed the old steward's eyes as he whispered, "Is all of this truly fate?" I rushed out of the fortress, eager to see the dragonet. The biting late autumn evening wind hit me, making me shiver. The cold air cleared my head, cooling my excitement. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten. Apparently, my body prefers basic sustenance over heroic quests. Standing at the gate, I sighed at the twilight-covered territory. There was still much to decide. "Forget it," I muttered. "I'll eat first, then handle the urgent matters." I walked toward the soldiers' dining area. It was a cluster of large sheds, now brightly lit and noisy. The victorious soldiers had shed their armor and weapons. They sat at long wooden tables, enjoying stew, black bread, and ale while sharing stories. When I appeared, a nearby soldier spotted me. The man stood up and saluted. "My lord." The greeting rippled through the hall, and every soldier rose. The noise died down as they stood in unison, repeating, "My lord." I smiled and waved them down. "Sit, continue eating." No formalities today. Relax. The soldiers sat, though the atmosphere remained lively as they stole glances at their lord. I spotted Buck dining with several officers in a corner. Buck signaled me, and I sat beside him. The officers tactfully excused themselves, leaving the two alone. A cook hurried over with a bowl of thick meat stew, black bread, and pickles. "My lord, it's fresh. Need anything else?" the cook asked nervously. I took a spoonful, blew on it, and smiled. "No, this is fine. It smells great." I tasted it. It was mild but hot and hearty, perfect for my hunger. It's amazing how much better food tastes when you aren't the one cooking it. The cook bowed and retreated, relieved. After watching me eat, Buck lowered his voice. "My lord, you're just in time. The men mentioned something strange." I chewed a piece of bread. "Oh, what is it?" "It's about Night Song Forest," Buck said, his expression turning serious. "The hunting and patrol squads report that the beasts on the forest outskirts have grown stronger." I slowed my eating and looked at Buck. "They say deer and boar are more numerous, but also more alert and aggressive. The hunters have suffered more injuries than usual. Sebastian already knows and has reinforced the patrols." I frowned. Beasts getting stronger. I immediately thought of the magic tide Sebastian had mentioned. Could this magic tide be mutating ordinary beasts? I pondered, then told Buck, "Follow Sebastian's current arrangements. After the 3-day break, you and Wolfgang take an elite squad to clear the forest outskirts. It's for training and to gauge the extent of these changes. Stay safe, don't venture too deep." Buck nodded. "Understood, my lord." The tension eased. Buck poured ale for me and looked at me with a teasing grin. "So, my lord, with the territory settled, when will you head to Thorn City for your wedding?" I sipped the ale. It was slightly bitter but warmed me. Nothing like a beverage that tastes like liquid regret to set the mood. "I'll leave as soon as I finish my work here, and return quickly." Buck smiled, then his expression turned somber. He glanced around and whispered, "Speaking of the wedding, Ika's intelligence gatherers heard news from the royal capital." I paused, signaling him to continue. "It's confirmed that the king will marry Isabella Medici, daughter of Duke Harkson Medici of the Southern Territory, next spring. I will officially marry Miss Isabella Medici, the daughter of Duke Harkson Medici of the Southern Territory." My eyes narrowed. A union between the South and the West. I understood the implications. Regent Federico was clearly courting the South to form a bloc with the West and the Royal Territory. The target was the excluded North and East. Buck nodded. "It's good for stability, but—" He shifted his tone. "Not everyone will be happy. The South and East are constant rivals. Many nobles in the Royal Territory resent Duke Federico. I worry about your father, Marquis Leon." "Father?" I frowned. As a powerful noble in the Royal Territory, Marquis Leon Black's position was precarious. "Yes, my lord." Buck sighed, the ale loosening his tongue. "Who keeps the kingdom stable right now?" I answered, "Duke Federico." "Exactly." Buck slammed his cup down. "The balance rests entirely on his prestige and capability. If something were to happen to him before King Aiden takes control, the kingdom would collapse. Which great duke would truly submit to a 9-year-old? The king is too young. And Princess Lynn, if she were alive, she could at least produce an heir." Buck's words left me deep in thought. If Duke Federico died unnaturally, the West, under Sir Lucius, would inevitably be dragged into the power struggle. The West would rise, not to usurp, but to avenge the Duke. Who would the enemy be? The East? The North? Lynn's true identity as the eldest princess would become a vital bargaining chip. Her existence would provide the West with a righteous cause. Buck realized he'd said too much and finished his drink. "My lord, ignore my drunken rambling. I've had too much." I smiled at the loyal old knight's embarrassment. It's comforting to know that even after decades of service, he still hasn't mastered the art of holding his liquor. I patted Buck's arm. "Buck, no need for such formalities between us." "But—" I looked into the dark night. "What we need now is time." Buck nodded, his composure returning. They stopped the heavy talk and chatted about minor territory matters and soldier anecdotes. I drank my ale, but my mind was far from calm. Buck's drunken ramblings had unlocked a flood of thoughts regarding the capital's political situation. I recalled the secrets Priest John had whispered in the prisoner camp. If the Minister of Intelligence, Bernard, was truly behind the attack on Thorn City, What was his goal? Was he hostile toward Duke Federico? Was it for personal power or a larger faction? Unfortunately, the secret letter linking Bernard to the Federation remnants had burned in the Storm City fire. With the evidence gone, I finished my drink, the sharp liquid burning my throat. I decided to compile my thoughts into a report for Sir Lucius. As a top power broker, Lucius might see clues I missed, assuming he isn't too busy being insufferably cryptic. I sighed and set down my empty glass. I had hoped for a respite after the war, but invisible pressures and complex schemes were already closing in. As night deepened, the dining hall quieted, and the exhausted soldiers retreated to their barracks. I and Buck finished our flagon and departed, the first night home passing in a blur of fatigue and contemplation. The next morning, I woke in my own bed at the fortress. The familiar scent of sun-dried linens and a dreamless sleep washed away most of my travel fatigue. Staring at the wooden ceiling, I felt a profound sense of peace. This was my territory. I stretched, my joints popping with the grace of a rusted gate, and climbed out of bed. I pushed open the heavy wooden window. The crisp, late autumn air, carrying the scent of the night song forest, invigorated me. The cold wind brushed my white hair, dispelling the last of my sleepiness as I looked down at the awakening obsidian territory. I instinctively reached out to touch my information system. Deep within my consciousness, there was only silence. The system remained dormant. Since the red comet streaked across the sky, my once reliable source of intelligence had been blocked. Though I had lost a vital asset, I remained calm. With the magic tide returning and the world changing, the system's silence was likely related. I turned away and ordered my guard to summon the administrators to the council hall in half an hour. After washing and changing into clean attire, I arrived early. To my surprise, the agricultural administrator, Hardy, was already waiting. Hardy stood and bowed respectfully. "Sit, Hardy," I said, taking my seat. "Where is Esther?" Esther was usually diligent in his duties as an assistant. Hardy explained, "Lord, I was about to report this. Esther is not in the Obsidian territory. 10 days ago, Sebastian sent him with soldiers and clerks to Spring City." Spring City, I realized. Sebastian has already sent a team to take it over? Yes, Hardy nodded. Sebastian believed we should secure it quickly for development. Esther is meticulous, so he was the right choice. I was pleased with Sebastian's efficiency. Has there been any word from Spring City? Yes, Hardy recalled. A letter arrived a few days ago. The population is sparse, only about 500 refugees and their descendants, living in poverty. The city walls are largely intact and only need minor repairs. The environment is excellent, with fertile soil and abundant water. Hardy smiled. Esther also reported a natural hot spring inside the city that never freezes. A hot spring. My eyes lit up. This was unexpected. I suppose even the apocalypse deserves a spa day. Beyond the comfort, the geothermal energy would be a massive advantage during the harsh winter. Excellent. Once I return from Thorn, I will integrate Obsidian Territory, Lucerne City, and Spring City. Only then will the Pendragon family have a solid foundation in the West. As they spoke, the door opened, and the other administrators entered. They bowed to me, and I gestured for them to sit. Leon and Master Glenn were the last to arrive, Leon closing the door against the cold. I looked around. Everyone, thank you for your hard work. The territory ran smoothly in my absence, thanks to your efforts. The meeting began. I turned to Old John. Old John, has the site for the Wanlu settlers been chosen? Old John stood. Yes, Lord. I consulted with Priest John. We selected the slope on the southeastern edge near the White River tributary. The edge? I raised an eyebrow. Old John explained. It was Priest John's request, citing their need for water and their faith. They have already begun clearing the land with great enthusiasm. Priest John also mentioned many are skilled in fishing and water management. They are eager to join our fisheries or maintain water facilities once settled. I nodded, pleased by their willingness to integrate. Proceed as planned. Old John, provide them with assistance, especially timber and tools. Winter is coming. Ensure they have shelter from the cold. Understood, Lord. I will convey your kindness to them. Weiss glanced at Ulu, who hesitated before standing. Lord, I have a report, Ulu said, his voice lower than usual. I nodded. Speak, Ulu. Weiss, Das, and I spent the night calculating the rewards for the soldiers. Including the pensions for the fallen and disabled, the cost is significant. Ulu glanced at my face before continuing. If paid in full, it will consume most of our gold and exchangeable supplies. With winter approaching, we have high expenses for food and fuel. Could we pay in installments to stabilize morale, then pay the rest in spring? I raised a hand, cutting him off. No, rewards and pensions must be paid in full and immediately. I softened my tone. The blood and lives sacrificed for these merits cannot be shortchanged. This concerns our military morale and the reputation of the Obsidian territory. I will handle the supplies. I looked at the administrators. First, Sir Lucius is well aware of the merits our territory earned in this war. I will arrange for our rewards and compensation to be collected from Thorn City and contact Kalen of the North Chamber of Commerce. I'll have him organize a caravan to bring essential winter supplies, grain, cloth, and salt, to the Obsidian territory for trade. We have enough spoils from the recent battle and local funds to cover the costs. Hearing my comprehensive plan and the resolution of the supply issue, the others felt a weight lift. Ulu, Weiss, and the other officials visibly relaxed, their worries vanishing. With the Lord in control of winter preparations, they felt at ease. It's amazing how quickly people stop panicking once they realize someone else is doing the math. Das, I called out. Are there still animal pelts left over from the last beast tied in the warehouse? Yes, Lord. We have plenty, all tanned and well preserved. Good, I ordered. Distribute them to families in need of warmth. However, they must not be given for free. They must be earned through labor, whether it's cleaning, clearing snow from public areas, or other assigned tasks. Coordinate the specifics with Ulu and Old John, I directed. Das beamed and agreed loudly. Yes, Lord. I thank you for your mercy and justice on behalf of the people. The other officials then reported on their respective sectors. The autumn harvest and winter wheat sowing were nearly finished. The mines were running smoothly under Master Glenn. The workshops were producing a surplus for trade. I reviewed plans for the second phase of wall reinforcement and residential management, offering guidance and praise. After an hour of planning, I encouraged them. The Obsidian territory is our foundation, and our future depends on your collective efforts. I hope you will continue to work with dedication to make our home prosperous and strong. We obey, Lord, the officials replied with confidence. After the meeting, I sat alone, tapping the table. With internal affairs settled, I looked toward the Night Song Forest. It was time to visit the Elven Sanctuary to see my dragonette and study magic, assuming I didn't get lost or eaten on the way. I entered the Night Song Forest alone. The late autumn forest was a tapestry of gold and crimson, the leaves crunching under my feet. I followed the familiar path until the forest cleared, revealing the sapphire-like lake. The water was still, reflecting the deep blue sky and the vibrant autumn trees. After admiring the view, I walked to the shore. I prepared to call for Valerian to open the path to the sanctuary. Before I could speak, the water rippled, and a young girl of about 7 or 8 emerged. She had porcelain skin and long, wet blue hair. Her eyes were a pure, deep lake blue, watching me with curiosity. It was Valerian's human form. Human Eli? She blinked. I chuckled. Did the princess tell you to say she wasn't here again? Valerian shook her head silently. She swam to the shore and reached out a wet, small hand. I took her cold, soft hand and pulled her onto the bank. Water dripped from her blue dress and hair, forming a puddle at her feet. Valerian, I have important matters for the princess. Can you open the way? Valerian hesitated, then leaned in to whisper in my ear. Human Eli. Can you not take Valerian away? Her pleading, soft voice and expectant blue eyes touched my heart. So cute, I thought. Valerian, that must be the dragonette's name. Don't worry, Valerian. I won't take him away, I smiled. The sanctuary is better for his growth. I'm just here to visit and ask the princess for advice. Valerian's eyes lit up. She nodded and turned to the lake, extending her hands. An invisible force rippled outward, and a staircase of crystalline water emerged from the lake. I took Valerian's hand, and we stepped onto the water stairs. The stairs were firm and cool, encased in a transparent, protective barrier. They descended to the giant jade door at the bottom. Valerian pressed her hand into a slot, and the door slid open. I entered the sanctuary, greeted by its familiar, soft, flowing light. My attention was immediately drawn to the center, where a dragonet the size of a large dog, covered in black scales, stood. It was pinning the struggling marmot, Gulu, to the ground with its claws. The dragonet growled playfully while Gulu kicked and shrieked in frustration. "Stupid dragon! Let me go? You're crushing my precious fur. I can't breathe." Gulu kicked with all his might, finally pushing the playful dragonet away. The dragonet, now excited, began bounding around the spacious sanctuary. It stopped abruptly upon noticing me, crouching with a wary growl, its golden, slit pupil eyes locked onto me. Beautiful, I thought. It's nice to be appreciated, even if it's just by a reptile deciding whether or not to eat me. Its black scales shimmered with a dark luster in the soft light. Fine, golden, vein-like patterns traced from its spine to its neck and head, like pure gold. Its golden eyes seemed to hold the light of a rising sun. As Balerion watched me, his wariness faded into a dazed expression. He tilted his head, seemingly puzzled. Valerian let go of my hand and ran to Balerion, opening her arms. "Balerion, come here." The dragonet looked between Valerian and me, then rushed into Valerion's arms, nuzzling her cheek. Peeking over her shoulder, he kept his gaze fixed on me. His nostrils flared, as if catching a familiar scent from me. I felt a surge of joy. I crouched down to meet Valerion's gaze and slowly extended a finger toward the dragonet's wet nose. Valerion didn't flinch, watching the finger with curious, golden eyes. As I touched its cold nose, the dragonet purred and squinted. I felt a surge of relief. I moved my hand to stroke the dragonet's hard, scaled head. The texture was cold and slick, lacking the comfort of fur, yet I didn't mind. A profound sense of satisfaction filled me. This was my dragon, my fated companion. "Balerion," I whispered, meeting its golden eyes. "I am Eli Pendragon." Balerion seemed to understand, exhaling a warm breath in response. Gulu, the marmot, scrambled up, dusting herself off and glaring at the scene. "Valerion," she shrieked, waddling over in a rage. "I told you not to let this white-haired human in. Why don't you listen?" Before she could attack, I grabbed her by the scruff, leaving her dangling. It's amazing how much fury can be packed into such a small, furry package. "Insolent. Put me down, Eli," she squealed, flailing uselessly. I held her face to face, amused by her puffed cheeks. "Gulu, I need to ask the princess something important." Gulu crossed her arms, turned her head, and huffed in a display of feigned dignity. "Umph. Too bad. The princess isn't at the sanctuary. She's out patrolling the forest." She glanced at me smugly. "Even if she were here, she wouldn't see you. I know what you want to ask. Beg me, and maybe I'll help." I smiled at her posturing and set her down. I doubted her claim about the princess, but didn't press. Instead, I pulled out a package of honey nut jerky. I opened the package and offered a piece to Balerion. Tempted by the scent, the dragonet hesitated but couldn't resist. It crawled out of Valerion's arms and carefully took the jerky from me. As it ate, its golden pupils narrowed into slits. It swallowed the treat and chirped happily, hopping in place. "Hey, don't ignore the great Gulu," she shouted. Neglected, Gulu stomped her feet in frustration. It was a terrifying display of raw power, if you were a patch of grass. I finally offered her a piece of jerky. Gulu swallowed hard, though she maintained her haughty facade. "Umph, don't think you can bribe me with this." She snatched it anyway, stuffing it into her mouth and forgetting her grievances as she chewed happily. Valerion giggled, watching the scene while holding the now calm Balerion. I distributed the rest of the jerky. Balerion, excited, jumped from Valerion's arms. It rubbed against my leg, then boldly tried to climb into my lap. Softening, I picked the creature up. Valerion snuggled into my warmth, devouring its portion. It then stared at my pocket, whimpering for more. "That's all for now," I said. Balerion, misunderstanding the head shake as a refusal, kicked off my arm. The dragonet's surprising strength sent me tumbling to the ground. Balerion, thinking it a game, pinned me down and began licking my face. "Stop, Balerion. It tickles. I'm out, I swear." I tried to push the heavy dragonet away, laughing and dodging. My struggles were futile against the young dragon's strength. Apparently, Being a silver knight doesn't grant you immunity to being slobbered on by a lizard. Gulu cackled at my misery. Serves you right. That's what you get for offending me. Using my strength as a silver knight, I finally hoisted the squirming dragonet into the air. Valerian dangled, confused, still eyeing the pocket. I handed the dragonet back to Valerian. Keep an eye on it. Valerian calmed the dragonet with gentle strokes. I straightened my clothes and turned to Gulu. Now, will you answer me? Gulu demanded he beg. I tried to bribe her with more food, but she insisted on a formal request. Losing patience, I drew my silver sword an inch. The cold blade rested near her neck. How do I learn magic? Help! Murder! Gulu shrieked, flailing in terror. She paused, blinking in surprise at my question. Magic? Shouldn't you ask about the red comet first? I nodded. Intimidation worked best. Yes, magic has returned with the magic tide. Tell me how to learn it. Gulu muttered. Not too bright, but okay. She gestured with her paws. The princess is truly away, calming the forest core due to the magic tide. She smirked. For me, Valerian, and that little dragon, magic is instinct. It's like breathing. We can't teach you humans how to do it. I realized the magic tide's impact was far deeper than I thought. Surely there are books or records. The elves have lived so long. There must be archives. Of course there are, she replied. When I glared, she quickly backpedaled. Fine. Stop looking at me like that. I'll show you, just have some patience. She hopped onto my shoulder and pointed. Follow me. Gulu guided me to a wooden door deep within the sanctuary. Open it, she commanded. I hesitated, eyeing the door and the mischievous marmot. Knowing Gulu's personality, I suspected a trap, mostly because she seemed far too eager for me to touch anything. You open it, I insisted. Gulu scoffed, cowered, and hopped off my shoulder. She backed up, charged, and slammed her round body into the door with a loud thud. The door swung open, revealing a small room. Inside were rows of shelves made of glowing wood, filled with scrolls, parchment, and bound books. It was a small library. Gulu scurried to the bottom shelf and began rummaging through the collection. Not this. No, a waste for this kid. Ah, found it. She dragged out a thick, ancient-looking book. Bound in green material with worn edges, the title was written in common script. Gulu waddled over and handed the heavy book to me. Take it. It's an introductory magic text by our last grand sage. You're lucky, but swear it. No other humans, and return it intact. It's a one-of-a-kind. I took the book, feeling its warm, tough texture. I nodded, but Gulu insisted on a formal oath. I sighed and placed my hand on the cover. By the gods, the goddess of life. Gulu corrected. Elves only swear by her. I complied. Great goddess of life. I black, swear to protect this book. I will not leak its contents to any human and will return it to the sanctuary intact. If I break this oath, I accept divine punishment. As I spoke, I felt a strange, binding sensation. It felt as if an invisible presence had witnessed and accepted my vow. Surprised by the goddess's responsiveness, I listened as Gulu nodded in satisfaction. I looked down at the book. I deciphered the title, Basic Magic Theory and Application. I opened the cover to the frontispiece, authored by Talalar Samir. My eyes widened in disbelief. Talalar Samir. I turned to Gulu. The last grand sage? Gulu puffed out her chest proudly. My mind raced. This was the mysterious old man from the Thorn La Roche fortress who had gifted me the blank book, harmonica, and ring. Apparently, he was a collector of junk as much as he was a sage. The connection was undeniable. Is he still alive? I asked, my heart pounding. He lived over 1,000 years ago. Even elves don't live that long. Our princess only survives through slumber. Grand Sage Talalar has long returned to the goddess. If he was dead, who did I meet? I pulled out the harmonica. I showed it to Gulu. She poked it, then her voice trailed off. She froze, her eyes widening. She shrieked, "This power, this aura, it's impossible. This is the Grand Sage's power. Let me see," she cried, desperate. She took the harmonica with trembling paws. She examined it closely. This aura, so serene and vast, it's authentic. She stroked the cold metal, sensing the rhythm within. I remember. The Grand Sage had a favorite harmonica that could communicate with nature. Whoever plays it might receive the goddess's blessing. She clutched it to her chest, feigning reluctance. This is too precious. I'll keep it safe for you. I flicked her on the head. Ouch, Gulu cried, dropping the harmonica. You jerk. I reclaimed it. It's mine. I tucked it away. Where did you get this? Gulu asked, bewildered. First the moonlight spring, now this? Are you the goddess's secret child? I stared at her. Beg me. No. Gulu pouted. When the princess returns, you'll pay. Talalar Samir gave it to me himself. Gulu froze, then fell backward, flat on her back. Apparently, my social circle is exclusively composed of ghosts and historical figures. He's alive? How? Princess, come back. She sprang up and grabbed my leg. Where is he? Tell me. I must witness this legend. Thorn City, La Roche Castle. La Roche? The one in the west. I nodded. Gulu's excitement turned to confusion and pain. She let go of my leg, clutching her chest. Grand Sage, did you betray the elves? No, this can't be. She collapsed and rolled on the floor, unable to process the news. I rubbed my temples. It's a miracle I don't have a permanent migraine by now. I don't know the full story. I'm going to Thorn City, and I'm taking this book to study. I took out the exquisite ring Talalar Samir had gifted me and handed it to Gulu. This is also for Princess Irene. Please pass it on for the Grand Sage. Gulu jumped up, carefully taking the ring to inspect it. So beautiful. The life energy is so pure. She was mesmerized, then shook her head, shouting, No, you can't leave until the princess returns. Ignoring her, I turned and headed toward the center of the sanctuary. Back at the central clearing, Valerian was holding a drowsy Balerian. I nodded to Valerian and gently stroked the dragon's head. Grow up quickly, Balerian, I whispered. Balerian nudged my hand with its cool head, purring softly in satisfaction. I left, walking toward the massive jade gate. Valerian watched me go. Returning to the surface via the water stairs, I took one last look at the beautiful lake and forest. Breathing in the fresh air, I clutched the heavy magic book and hurried away. I felt a sense of relief at not having to face Princess Irene. Yet, a trace of disappointment lingered. Driven by a desire for the knowledge in my arms, I quickened my pace. Soon, the walls of obsidian territory appeared. I slipped into my study, lit a candle, and placed the book, Basic Magic Theory and Application, on the desk. I calmed my excitement and opened the leather cover. The author's preface followed. Over long ages, I, Talalar Samir, have compiled these lessons. May this book illuminate the path for those with pure hearts seeking the truth of magic. Nightsong Forest, New Moon Era 504. The weight of history hit me, and I eagerly turned the page. Magic, or ether, the song of all things, is the source power flowing through the world, from the wind and rivers to the earth and living breath. My heart raced with excitement as I immersed myself in the text. A mage does not create. They guide existing ether, transforming it into fire, frost, storms, or healing. Think of a river. The water exists. The mage simply digs channels. The stronger the spirit and understanding, the wider the channel, and the more powerful the magic. The book used vivid metaphors to explain the principles. I read until the room went dark, then relit the candle. The first step was testing one's affinity for different elemental magics. This usually required special tools, which I lacked. However, the book described a more primitive, talent-based method. One could directly touch and feel the pure elemental forces in nature. A body with high affinity would instinctively respond to its element. I looked at the candle flame. I hesitated, then reached out, touching the outer flame with my index finger. I felt no pain. It's a good thing I'm not testing my affinity for lava next. The flame felt like a warm, gentle embrace. Frowning, I wondered if my affinity was too low. I pressed my entire palm into the flame. The fire engulfed my hand, still feeling only warm. As I focused, I sensed something unusual. Beyond the warmth, I perceived the rhythm of the dancing flame and a growing, genuine heat. I resisted the urge to pull away, focusing on that rhythm. After 10 seconds, the heat became intense, and my skin began to sting. I pulled my hand back. My skin remained white, with no burns, blisters, or charring. The lingering heat proved it wasn't an illusion. The path of magic seemed even more intriguing than I imagined. I tried testing other elements, dipping my hand in water and pressing it against the earth. Yet, I felt nothing like the song of all things. Water was just cold, and earth was just rough. I concluded my affinity was high for fire. I didn't know if this single-element focus was a blessing or a curse, but I had a direction. Energized, I searched the book for basic fire spells. I settled on the classic, Fireball. It's the magical equivalent of a firm handshake, apparently. The book detailed the principles, stability, and the standard incantation. I took a breath, memorizing every detail. I tried to clear my mind and extend my spirit like tentacles. Sensing the act of magic was difficult. My spirit felt like an imprecise thread. The world remained chaotic, save for the faint warmth near the candle. I decided to try the incantation. Standing, I held my palm up and chanted the ancient words. Listen, the fiery whispers in the air. Awaken the sleeping light. Borrow a thread of flame from the heavens. By the ancient contract, condense into the soul of a sun core. Take stable form. Project the intent. Now, condense in my palm. Initially, nothing happened. I felt foolish, which is a feeling I'm becoming remarkably well acquainted with. But as I finished the last syllable, the air temperature spiked. It wasn't an illusion. A real wave of heat brushed my face. Above my palm, the air distorted, and a bright orange spark of fire manifested. I had succeeded. In my excitement, my focus wavered, and with a soft pop, the spark vanished. A wave of exhaustion and dizziness hit me, and I collapsed to my knees. Phew! I almost succeeded on the first try. I panted. After a short rest, my physical strength returned, though my mind remained weary. I lay back on the cold floor, laughing softly. Magic martial dual cultivation. A term common in novels, now within my grasp. A powerful knight's physique combined with mysterious magic. What a future that would be. Despite the exhaustion, that moment of success was intoxicating. Late at night in the Sun Palace, Regent Federico LaRoche sat buried under mountains of paperwork. The silence was broken by the Golden Lion Knights announcing the Minister of Intelligence, Bernard. Bernard entered, his face etched with urgency, bypassing formal etiquette. Regent, there is trouble. Federico remained calm, urging him to speak slowly. Bernard reported that his spies confirmed Marquis Vesa Moriarty had secretly left Golden Lily City yesterday, likely heading for the north. The Marquis of Defeat himself. I suspect they are meeting in secret to plot against us. Federico's reaction was unexpectedly detached. His expression remained as still as a stagnant well. Oh, I expected them to act sooner. It is their only choice, Bernard. Bernard stepped forward to assist the regent as he stood. I will write a royal decree, Federico said, his gaze sharp. Send it to the Midsummer Islands immediately. Tell them to remain neutral, or they will be considered enemies of the Orlando Kingdom. Bernard bowed in compliance. Bernard hesitated, noting that such a warning might alienate the Midsummer Islands, given their close ties to the Russell family. Federico ignored the question, shifting the topic. Have the grain and winter supplies from Duke Harkson arrived? Bernard paused before answering. Marquis Claude is overseeing that, my lord. I believe the supplies have largely arrived. The unrest in the capital has subsided, and the refugees are being settled. It is all thanks to your strategic planning. Federico walked to the window, staring into the dark night. The astrologers say this winter will be long and harsh. I only hope these supplies save more of our people. Bernard mirrored his expression with practiced sorrow and admiration. Your benevolence is inspiring. Oh, and there is good news. Your brother, Lucius, has successfully reclaimed the entire western border with the coalition army. Federico remained unmoved, then suddenly asked, Bernard, you have been meeting with Aiden quite often lately. Bernard's smile stiffened, then shifted into a look of pride. It's amazing how quickly one can pivot from treason to sycophancy. Yes, Regent. The king is curious about the upcoming wedding and the future queen. He asks about the Southern Territory and the Medici family history. I answer everything I know. Federico nodded, satisfied. Bernard, I know you are ambitious. I appreciate that, and so. Bernard bowed low, his heart racing. As long as you remain loyal to the kingdom, a count's title will not be your limit. Bernard dropped to his knees without hesitation. Regent, my honor, my life, everything I am is thanks to your patronage. My loyalty is yours alone, by the gods. Federico waved him off with a blank expression. Go, and see that my orders are carried out. As you command. Bernard kowtowed. He backed out of the study and closed the door, stepping into the biting night wind outside the Sun Palace. Bernard straightened his posture, unaffected by the cold. He looked at the moon, a cold smile curling his lips. The alliance between the East and North was inevitable, just as Federico predicted. With the Medici family of the South marrying into the throne, the West, royal territory, and South had formed a power bloc. The Eastern nobles, feeling isolated, were bound to align with the Northern Olaf family. His long-term scheme was finally complete. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you have absolutely no moral compass to weigh you down. Any meeting between the East and North would now be interpreted by Federico as treason. He had spent years carefully funneling rumors and suspicion toward the Russell family. Tonight, he received the confirmation he wanted. Federico was forcing the East into rebellion. It was the perfect outcome. Bernard laughed softly, opening his hand. Moon of the Russells, an ancient family. He made a grasping motion toward the moonlight. Ha ha ha. He could no longer suppress his triumph, his laughter echoing through the empty palace corridors. At dawn, I prepared to depart with Wolfgang and Sebastian. Wolfgang stood like a statue in the mist. The old butler, in his crisp black suit, looked as calm as if they were going on a routine errand. I felt confident leaving the Obsidian territory in the hands of Buck and old John. Sebastian had volunteered for this trip himself. With Marquis Leon Black stuck in the capital, someone needed to represent the family at the wedding. As the head butler, Sebastian was the perfect choice to uphold the Black family's dignity. He could return quickly afterward without disrupting territory affairs. I felt a surge of warmth at the gesture. Their bond had transcended master and servant. I viewed Sebastian as a mentor and family. Let's go to Thorn, I agreed. We planned to ride hard and use Sebastian's shadow stealth technique to teleport near the city. They would use the technique to bridge the final distance. Time passed in the monotony of travel. Apparently, the world's scenery doesn't get any more exciting just because I'm in a hurry. They rode past frosted grass, war-torn fields, and recovering villages. By the second morning, they rested by a stream. I washed my face, noticing more people on the road than before, signaling a return to normalcy. Caravans laden with goods rumbled along the road, their horses neighing, signaling the return of commerce. These travelers were likely refugees returning to their reclaimed homes after seeking safety in Thorn City. Others were new settlers, drawn by Sir Lucius's policies to rebuild the war-torn lands. Sebastian stood beside me, watching the bustling crowd with a calm nod. The western border is reviving. The sharpest minds are already sniffing out opportunities. I mounted my horse, tightening the reins as I watched the figures trudging through the cold. Winter is coming. I hope they find shelter, I said, signaling for them to continue. The trio spurred their mounts and galloped toward Thorn City. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Night Song Forest, the air here was thick with wild, primal energy, a stark contrast to the autumn chill outside. The trees glowed with an unnatural dark green, and veins of visible energy pulsed through the ground. Queen Irene hovered above a forest clearing. Though weary, her eyes shone with unprecedented brilliance. She radiated a majestic, natural aura, like a forest empress descended to earth. Below, a vast multitude of beasts knelt in submission. These creatures were larger than ordinary beasts, their eyes filled with newfound intelligence and awe. Among them were truly terrifying entities. A giant tiger with flaming fur, a thunder-clawed eagle with a massive wingspan, and a metallic-scaled horned python. Ancient magical beasts awakened by the magic tide. Others were lucky beasts that had evolved after consuming rare treasures during the tide. Now, they were all true magical beasts. These powerful beast kings bowed their heads to the slender figure in the sky. Irene was the true source of the beast tide that had plagued the Obsidian territory. Apparently, she hadn't just been out for a casual stroll. Upon waking, she couldn't perfectly control her overflowing life and natural energy. This energy had incited the beasts, amplifying their wildness. Now that her power had largely recovered, she could easily suppress them. Calming the forest core was no longer a struggle. She projected a mental command to the beast kings. Keep their tribes within the inner circle. They were forbidden from attacking human lands and must maintain the forest's balance. The beasts whimpered in obedience. Having finished, Irene vanished like a breeze. She reappeared on the island in the center of the lake within the elven sanctuary. She landed lightly on the soil. In her palm appeared a half-foot-tall sapling, glowing with vibrant green life. Its leaves resembled fine emeralds, with liquid light flowing through its veins. Irene looked at it with rare tenderness. She carefully planted the sapling into the island's most energy-rich soil. Satisfied as the plant began to draw energy, she nodded. She then vanished, reappearing on her throne within the lake-bottom sanctuary. Her arrival stirred the residents. Gulu was frantically flipping through a massive ancient tome, searching for something. Balerion and Valerian, in his blue dragonet form, were curled up together on a mossy mat, sleeping. "Princess, you're back." Gulu dropped the book and leaped onto Irene's lap. Irene caught her. "What's wrong?" That white-haired brat came here," Gulu complained, pointing toward the entrance. Irene's eyes flickered, but her expression remained calm. "Did he bully you again?" Irene asked neutrally. Gulu nodded, then shook her head frantically. It's comforting to know that even in a magical sanctuary, some things never change, like being harassed by the neighborhood menace. "Not exactly. Princess, do you know the last grand sage of the elves, Talalar Samir?" Irene nodded. "He is the symbol of our ancient wisdom and power." "Yes, I say he's alive. In the LaRoche family's Thorn City. I even have the legendary sky harp. The Grand Sage must be senile to be tricked by that cunning brat. Anyway, the Grand Sage is in Thorn City." Irene frowned, clearly stunned by the news. "The Grand Sage alive? Why in Thorn?" She stood up, setting Gula down. "This concerns our ancient heritage. I must go to Thorn City myself. You stay here and watch over Balerion and Valerian. I must go to Thorn City myself. You stay here at the sanctuary and look after Balerion and Valerian." Gulu jumped up and grabbed Irene's leg. "No, I'm coming with you. I can protect you." Irene smiled faintly. Gulu, feeling underestimated, suddenly remembered something. "Oh, right. I told me to give you this." She pulled out a delicate ring inlaid with a clear green gem and a butterfly motif. Gulu handed it over like a treasure. "It's pretty. That brat knows how to please you." Irene's expression froze as she saw the ring. She stared, her eyes wide, as if checking if she were dreaming. "Princess." Gulu tilted her head, confused. "He gave this to you?" "To give to me." "Yes." Gulu insisted. "Do you want to try it on?" Irene reached out, her movements sluggish, and took the ring. As her fingers touched the cold metal, she trembled but only stared at it. With a flicker of space, the ring vanished into her storage. "No need," Irene said, her voice turning cold. She turned toward the exit. "We depart. To Thorn." My group rode until they reached a hidden valley, where Sebastian signaled a stop. Sebastian reached the range for his shadow stealth technique. "Here, my lord," he said, dismounting calmly. He stood in a shadowed area, hands clasped, and began a low, ancient incantation. "Shadows between realities, heed my call, guide our path." Ink-like shadows surged, wrapping around the trio and their horses like living tentacles. Wolfgang felt a sudden, icy darkness engulf him, plunging him into a void where his senses vanished. For a wolfkin warrior who relied on keen senses, the experience was unervingly terrifying. The sensation vanished as quickly as it came. As solid ground returned, Wolfgang shook his head and blinked, staring ahead in disbelief. A massive, majestic city stood on the plains before them, featuring towering walls and grand gates. The Golden Lion banner fluttered atop the walls. It was Thorn City, capital of the western border. Wolfgang gasped, his wolf eyes wide with shock and confusion. He glanced back at the mountain valley they had just left, then back at the city. The sheer impact left him speechless. Despite his strength, he felt a soul-deep reverence for such incomprehensible spatial magic. He looked at the calm Sebastian, his estimation of the mysterious butler soaring to new heights. I, having experienced this before, merely shook off the slight dizziness. It's a bit like being shoved through a straw, but you get used to the lack of oxygen. I patted my horse, Windchaser, and led the way toward the bustling gates of Thorn City, which was teeming with activity following its recent liberation. Guards conducted only perfunctory checks, asking for their intent before waving them through. However, one gray-haired veteran officer stood out from the lax guards. Vega, a veteran of the brutal defense of Thorn City who had been left with a permanent limp, scanned the crowd with hawk-like precision. Though offered a pension to retire, he had refused. Devoted to the military and the West, he accepted a post at the city gates, performing his duties without complaint. Vega's eyes narrowed as he locked onto the approaching trio. He focused on the young man with striking white hair and the massive wolfkin warrior behind him. That hair, that entourage, it was Viscount Pendragon. Vega's heart skipped a beat. Though he hadn't fought on the walls, he had seen that white-haired figure fighting like a god of war during the battle. Limping forward, he approached them with excitement. Viscount Pendragon. I paused, surprised. You know me? Viscount, who in the West doesn't know you? You are our hero, the guardian of Thorn City. He stood tall, offering a standard military salute. Are you entering the city? Please, let me guide you. I felt a surge of emotion at the veteran's sincerity. I appreciate it, I replied, following Vega. Vega's excited shouts drew the attention of the entire gate area. Eyes turned toward me. My God, is that Viscount Pendragon? He's so young. My son is his age, yet he's already achieved such glory. It's him, the white hair, and the wolfkin. My father said he charges like a war chariot. Whispers of curiosity, worship, and awe rippled through the crowd. Wolfgang, catching the praise, stood a little taller, chin held high. I was genuinely surprised by the extent of my reputation. Apparently, being a local celebrity mostly involves people staring at you while you try to walk through a door. I had not realized my fame had reached such heights among the common folk. I maintained a composed smile, nodding to the citizens. Vega, fearing a blockage, barked at his men. Clear a path for the Viscount. Vega personally escorted the trio through the crowded gate. Welcome to Thorn City, Viscount, Vega said. I patted the veteran's shoulder. Thank you. Your hard work is noted. Vega was overwhelmed. It is my honor to serve you, my lord. My kindness warmed the old soldier's heart. I nodded and led my companions into the city. Vega watched them go. Only when the white hair vanished did he break into a wide grin. He whispered to his subordinates. Listen up, you fools. The Viscount patted my shoulder. I'll be bragging about this for years. Inside, Thorn City was vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the tension of wartime. I headed straight for La Roche Fortress at the city center. The fortress guards, more elite than the gate guards, recognized me instantly. They saluted with genuine enthusiasm. Viscount Eli, welcome back. Great work at Storm City. I exchanged brief, polite pleasantries. I finally entered the fortress with my companions. The fortress steward hurried forward, bowing. Viscount Eli, welcome back to La Roche. Your quarters are prepared. I thanked him. Please, see that my companions are settled in. As you wish, my lord. The steward summoned servants to guide Wolfgang and Sebastian to the guest quarters. I arrived at the quiet corridor housing Sir Lucius Laroche's study. I stopped before the familiar heavy wooden door. After tidying my dusty robes, I knocked gently. A calm voice called, Enter. I exhaled and pushed the door open. Sir Lucius. I greeted the familiar figure behind the desk, amidst the scent of ink and aged parchment. Lucius looked up from a map, his stern face softening slightly. He gestured for me to sit. You've returned. You must be tired. He cut straight to the point. Your wedding with Lynn is set for 3 days from now. This is the priority. Do you have any thoughts? As Lucius poured tea, I stood to receive the cup with both hands. None, Sir Lucius. I follow your arrangements. I suppose my opinion on my own life was never part of the budget. I bowed slightly in thanks and sat back down. Holding the warm cup, I hesitated before speaking. Lucius leaned back, sipping his tea with a knowing look. I've said it before, Eli, we are family. No need for such formality. He smiled playfully. I suspect I know what you're going to ask. I offered a wry smile. Indeed, Sir Lucius. Regarding the red comet, is it more than just an astronomical phenomenon? Lucius stared at me, asking if it mattered. I nodded, sensing a shift. Lucius tapped the desk, his voice turning heavy. It is a sign, recorded in our family's secret tome. I once thought it a mere story, but magic is returning. I feigned shock. Magic? The supernatural power of the elves and ancient mages. Yes, Lucius confirmed. It is a force beyond steel and armor, and a chaotic variable for our kingdom. I despise it, It is a destroyer of order. I nodded, shifting to practical matters. With the western border secured, is our plan to rest? Lucius shook his head and led me to a massive map of the Orlando Kingdom. The map displayed the royal territory surrounded by the four borders. Rest is necessary, but not enough. How much do you know of the kingdom's state? I shook my head, inviting Lucius to teach me. Lucius pointed to the center. Loyalty between the royal territory and the four borders is superficial. The kingdom holds together only by the regent's iron will. He pointed to the south. My brother chose to bind the Medici family to us through the marriage of the king and Isabella Medici. Thus, the west, the royal territory, and the south form a fragile triangle. But the king is young, and there is no heir to solidify this alliance. It is unstable. We need a common enemy to force unity. The Russell family in the Eastern Territory. I asked why the East was chosen. Lucius sighed, his expression pained. My brother's investigation confirms the former queen, his own daughter, was assassinated by the Russell family. My pupils constricted in shock. I knew better than to press for details on such a dangerous matter. Curiosity is a great way to end up as a footnote in a history book. Lucius moved his finger to the north. As for the Olaf family in the north, their situation is different. They were crushed during the North Border Independence War 20 years ago. I fought in that war, Lucius said, his eyes heavy with memory. Raymond Olaf grew ambitious, declaring himself king of the north and defying King August. Ironically, his rebellion united the rest of the kingdom. The coalition army marched to Herengard. Raymond was captured and executed. The north has been broken and submissive ever since. I realized Federico LaRoche intended to treat the Russells as the new Raymond Olaf to restore order. Nothing says peace and stability like a public execution, apparently. The Russells were the perfect target to make an example of. It was a calculated move to reassert control. Lucius's voice pulled me back to the present. After winter, my brother will likely move against the east. He waved the thought away, forcing a smile. Next spring, you will accompany me to Orlandia for the king's wedding. You will go as Eli Black, expansion knight of the royal territory. I sighed, accepting my return to the capital under a new identity. Yes, Sir Lucius. I paused. One last question. What role will my wife, Lynn, play in the coming storm? Lucius was surprised by the young man's directness. It was a question he had been avoiding himself. Lynn was the late king's eldest daughter, a legitimate princess. She was an Aurora, holding the legal right to the throne. Lucius shook his head. I don't know, Eli. Her identity is too sensitive. How and when she is used concerns her safety and the fate of the entire kingdom. Lucius looked at me, his gaze steady. Regardless, I will respect Lynn's choices. She is my grandniece. I will never force her. I met his eyes firmly. Sir Lucius, I feel the same. I will protect her with my life, no matter who she chooses to become. A heavy silence filled the study, the shifting light through the glass windows mirroring the uncertain future. At dawn, as the first pale, cold light touched the gray walls of Sona, the capital of the western border, an unexpected visitor arrived like a breeze. On the towering walls of Thorn City, biting winds whistled past the battlements, snapping the cloaks of the patrolling soldiers. Amidst the sharp-eyed, marching guards stood two figures, the elf princess, Irene, and Galoo, the marmot shivering on her shoulder. Strangely, the elite soldiers, usually alert to the slightest movement, seemed collectively blind to their presence. This was the concealment of a child of nature, blending into the wind and light. Unless Irene willed it, no mortal gaze could perceive her. Irene stood atop the wall, the high-altitude winds whipping her silver hair and white dress. She lowered her eyes, gazing down at the waking human metropolis. It was the busiest hour of the morning. At the base of the wall, exhausted laborers gathered in the shelter. They held rough bowls, gulping down steaming hot offal soup. Cheap ale spilled onto their clothes amidst boisterous laughter, while the nearby market roared with noise. With winter approaching, for the common folk, securing enough supplies to survive the long cold was the highest priority. Hey, how much coal dust is in this? Trying to freeze me? Lower the price by 2 coppers. Good heavens. Go elsewhere. I'm already losing money. Vendors and housewives haggled fiercely over every copper. As a long-lived race with detached emotions, she rarely observed the lives of these short-lived humans so closely. So this is humanity, fragile, noisy, and driven by desire. It's a wonder they haven't managed to accidentally set the entire continent on fire yet. Yet, watching the rising steam and hearing the clamor of the morning, she felt a vibrant vitality pulsing through the stone city. It was vastly different from the quiet night song forest. Interesting, Irene whispered. Her observation was interrupted by a sudden, loud sneeze. Achoo! Gulu shuddered violently, a crystal-clear, snot bubble forming on its nose. Sniff! Gulu rubbed its nose, clutching its shivering body with its paws. With resentful eyes and chattering teeth, it squeaked, "Princess, Gulu is going to freeze into an icicle." Irene turned to the little creature. Gulu's usually sleek fur was a mess, failing to protect it from the high-altitude chill. It looked less like a noble beast and more like a discarded floor mop. Irene felt a pang of guilt and tapped its head. "My apologies, Gulu. I was distracted." She shifted slightly. Like a falling leaf, they vanished from the wall. An instant later, they stood in a sheltered street corner below. Gulu, feeling the warmth return, sprang back to life. It hopped onto the stone pavement, its energy restored. "Phew, I'm alive," it muttered, rolling its beady eyes to inspect the surroundings. The sense of food and smoke filled the air. The smell of roasted meat, fresh bread, and rich stew made Gulu's nose twitch and its mouth water. "Wow, so fragrant. That's meat. And is that honey?" Humans are dim-witted, but they know how to cook. Gulu bounced around Irene's feet, pointing at shops. Despite the crowd, no one paid the strange pair any mind. Irene ignored Gulu's antics. "Gulu, we have no money," she said coldly. Though she could easily take what she wanted, her pride as an elf princess forbade theft. Gulu stopped drooling and looked up at Irene with a grin. It tapped the small cloth bag hanging on its chest with a pop. "Hee hee, princess, you underestimate the great Gulu. Money? Mere trifles. I came prepared." It pointed toward a bustling bakery nearby. The shelves were filled with bread. "I want that. And that red one." Irene sighed and walked toward Old Pick Bakery, easing her mental concealment. "Step right up. Fresh honey bread, baked with the finest honey from the Obsidian territory." The owner was a kind-faced, wrinkled old man. Beside him, a young girl of about 12 helped pack orders. "That'll be 2 coppers, thanks." The girl froze as she looked up and saw Irene. She was stunned by Irene's beauty, feeling suddenly self-conscious and blushing as she fidgeted with her apron. Old Pick noticed his granddaughter, Anna, and looked up. He was momentarily taken aback, but quickly regained his composure, wiping his hands and bowing politely. "Welcome to Old Pick Bakery. Good morning, beautiful lady. What can I get for you?" Irene pointed to the items Gulu had requested. "One of each, and the red bean one." "Right away," Old Pick urged his dazed granddaughter. "Anna, quick, pack the best ones for the lady." The girl scrambled to grab the paper bags, carefully placing the bread inside. Soon, a large, fragrant bag was ready. Old Pick handed it over with a fawning smile. "Here you go, miss. That will be 1 silver coin and 5 coppers." Gulu scoffed at the price, reached into its bag, and pulled something out, leaving Old Pick and Anna in shock. The strange mouse pulled a gold coin from its bag and handed it to Queen Irene. Irene placed the coin on Old Pick's counter. The old man panicked, stammering that it was too valuable and he couldn't provide change. I looked up, intending to negotiate with the beautiful woman. I froze. The radiant woman and the mouse had vanished into thin air, leaving only the gold coin behind. Where did they go? Old Pick scanned the area. The street was busy, but the silver-haired figure was gone. "Grandpa, was that a goddess?" Little Anna asked, her eyes filled with awe. Old Pick bit the coin to confirm it was real. I tucked it away and bowed toward the empty space. Perhaps a goddess was passing through. Nearby, in a deserted alley, Irene watched Gulu devour a pastry. Gulu held a honey croissant larger than its head, taking massive, steaming bites. "So hot, but so good." It squeaked, refusing to spit it out. It stomped its feet while chewing, its cheeks bulging. "Slow down, no one is taking it," Irene sighed. Gulu finished the pastry in seconds. It licked its paws, eyes darting around for more. It pointed at a nearby kebab vendor. "Princess, That looks good too. Irene wiped the honey from Gulu's face. Focus, Gulu. We are here for the Grand Sage. Gulu sobered up, climbed onto her shoulder, and they vanished into a breeze. They reappeared before the gates of the La Roche fortress in the heart of Thorn City. Irene closed her eyes. She projected her mental energy into the fortress. She was searching for an elven signature. As a high-ranking elf, she should sense a bloodline resonance if the Grand Sage were present. She opened her eyes. Nothing. She sensed hundreds of humans, but no elven aura. Let's go inside, Irene decided, walking toward the gate. The elite guards stood motionless, ignoring them. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. Gulu became alert. Its fur bristled as it gripped Irene's shoulder. Princess, be careful. This is the La Roche family's territory, but I will protect you. Irene patted Gulu to silence it, walking past portraits of cold-eyed La Roche ancestors, who looked like they'd been judging people since the invention of the frown. She felt no hatred, only a desire for the truth. Suddenly, she stopped, locking her gaze on the end of the corridor. Gulu jumped, ready for battle. Enemies? Where? Let them face the great Gulu. No. Gulu, Irene whispered, her eyes misting. I hear it, the Grand Sage's call. She vanished in a blur of magic. She arrived at a heavy oak door at the end of the hall and pushed it open to reveal a library. The old man, Talaler Samir, the Grand Sage, sat curled in a chair, eyes closed. He opened his cloudy eyes as she entered. Irene steadied herself. She performed a formal, ancient elven greeting. Grand Sage Talaler, I am Queen Irene Lanavale. Her voice trembled with reverence. Gulu popped out, waving its paws. Grand Sage, I am the princess's chief steward, Gulu the Great. Irene flicked Gulu on the head. Ouch! Gulu retreated. Talaler chuckled. Ha! Greetings, princess. It is a miracle you are still alive, Irene said. Talaler laughed again. Ha ha! You are just like your mother, princess, not very good with words. Is that how you greet an old man? By noting he's still alive? Irene blushed. She lowered her head, accepting the rebuke from the legend. Gulu tried to interject again. Grand Sage, why are you with the La Roche family? Did they seal you away? I can break you out. Talaler stopped laughing, tilting his head in feigned confusion. Who is this noisy little thing? Gulu froze. Its mouth hung open. Was it being ignored? Honestly, it was a fair question. After a moment, Gulu exploded in rage. It leaped onto Talaler, shaking him by the collar. You foul old man. How dare you ignore the great Gulu? Talaler laughed heartily as Gulu scrambled over me. Irene watched, surprised by the Grand Sage's playful, eccentric demeanor, which contrasted sharply with his legendary reputation. Though I suppose legends are rarely this prone to being climbed like a jungle gym. Irene asked solemnly, Grand Sage, why do you hide within the La Roche family? If you have a burden, I am willing to offer the full support of my people. Talaler waved his withered fingers, summoning an irresistible force. He gently lifted Gulu into the air, spinning the creature like a floating ball. The old man's laughter faded, his gaze turning deep and calm. Ha ha. Child, I apologize. I know why you are here and what you seek, but I cannot answer. You only need to know that staying here is my own choice. Irene frowned, confused. Why? The magic tide has returned. The world is changing. The elves need your guidance. Forgive me, child. Talaler interrupted softly. Everything has a destiny. The torrent of fate rolls forward, and I cannot, nor will I, interfere. He looked at Irene with kind eyes. The outcome is already set. I called you here for no deep reason. I simply wanted to see you. Irene was stunned by his simplicity. Talaler removed his worn hood. His face was as withered as tree bark, revealing his wise, aged pointed ears. Come here, child. Irene knelt beside his chair. Talaler stroked her cheeks with his dry hands. He placed his hands on her head, forming ancient seals. A vibrant green light enveloped her, washing away her soul's fatigue. This was the blessing of life, a gesture of profound love reserved for the highest elven lineage. He then blessed Gulu, who became uncharacteristically docile. Irene felt light and refreshed. Gulu couldn't resist asking, Grand Sage, did that white-haired brat trick you out of your harp of the sky? That treasure is yours. Don't be fooled by his sweet talk. A strange glint flashed in Talalur's eyes at the mention of the white-haired youth. He remained silent, smiling enigmatically at Gulu. Gulu grew frantic, jumping about. Ugh, why won't you say anything? Aren't you our grand sage? Enough, Gulu. Irene stopped the creature, respecting Talalur's silence. She bowed her head. Grand sage, if you have decided, I will not press you. If you ever wish to return to Night Song Forest, the sanctuary's doors will always be open. Talalur sighed, his expression turning complex. Princess, actually, there is something I must tell you. Irene leaned in, listening intently. Talalur looked at the young princess, who resembled her mother. His expression turned grave. This is not a prophecy, but the compassion of an old man nearing his end. His voice echoed in the library. Princess, I urge you, stay as far away from me as possible. Irene was stunned, her brow furrowing in confusion. Talalur's smile vanished, replaced by a cold, sorrowful look. He stared into her eyes and said, Because you will die at the hands of me. Time passed, and the eve of the wedding between me and Lynn Aurora arrived. Thorn City shed its grim, military exterior, dressing itself in festive finery. Under the direction of Sir Lucius, the administrator of the West. With the cooperation of officials, the city was adorned with decorations, as if a little bunting could make everyone forget we were essentially living in a fortress. From the gates to the narrow alleys, golden lion banners and white ribbons hung everywhere. The streets were scrubbed clean, with fine sand spread over the slums. Tomorrow, a wedding for the history books would take place. The groom was the West's rising hero me. The bride was the LaRoche family's jewel, Lynn Aurora. The wedding served as a declaration of power, and my fame was at its peak. Bards sang epics of my victory at Storm City. Children mimicked my white hair and swordsmanship. The political influence reached far beyond the West as a massive delegation arrived. Regent Federico LaRoche had sent an official congratulatory mission. They brought gifts from King Adenai, Federico himself, and high-ranking nobles. The endless line of treasure chests stunned the citizens. Wealthy nobles from the south, including the Medici family, sent lavish gifts to match the royal standard. Even nobles who opposed Federico joined in. This included a gift from my father, Marquis Leon Black. It was clear this event was a political litmus test disguised as a celebration. Federico sought to test his allies' loyalties. Inside LaRoche Fortress, the atmosphere was quiet. I, dressed in casual attire, approached Lucius's study. I knocked once and entered without waiting for a response. Lucius was reclining by the window, sharpening a short blade. Lucius didn't even look up, simply gesturing for me to take a seat. I sat down with a sigh, complaining to Lucius about the tedious wedding rituals, especially the endless practice required for the entrance walk. Apparently, walking in a straight line is a skill I have yet to master. The LaRoche family's rigid etiquette tutors had been driving me to the brink of madness. Lucius paused his work at the complaint. He looked at the young man's pained expression, a rare, faint smile touching his usually stern lips. Tedious, Lucius teased. You call this suffering? You have no idea how much more I have to prepare. You just have to stand there and look good. I have to manage everything else. I rubbed my nose in embarrassment as Lucius set down his whetstone and began cleaning a unique, beautiful dagger with a piece of deerskin. The blade was slender, a cold, silvery white, engraved with intricate thorn patterns. The patterns extended to the hilt, making the weapon look like it was forged from iron thorns. Satisfied, Lucius handed it to me, and I was surprised by its unexpected weight. Despite its delicate appearance, the dagger was heavier than a standard steel longsword. As I traced the thorn patterns, Lucius leaned back, eyes filled with nostalgia. This is my wedding gift to you. It's called Lady of Thorns. It belonged to a female ancestor of the LaRoche family and has been in our vault for a century. Lucius spoke solemnly. Don't underestimate it. It is forged entirely from mithril. I was shocked by the value of the gift. Apparently, my safety is worth a small kingdom's annual budget. Lucius waved off my protests, insisting that a weapon left in a vault was a waste and that it would serve me well for self-defense. Besides, Lucius added, glancing at my white hair, the color matches you perfectly. I carefully sheathed the dagger and bowed deeply. Thank you, Sir Lucius. I cherish this gift. Lucius smiled and moved on. I've organized all the gifts from the nobles and your father, and the rewards due to the Obsidian territory for the war. Everything is packed and ready for you to take back to the Obsidian territory after the wedding. My eyes lit up. These supplies were exactly what my territory desperately needed. Thank you, Sir Lucius. This will ensure the Obsidian territory has a prosperous winter. Lucius chuckled at my greed, telling me to leave so I could rest. Yes, sir, I'm going. I bowed again and turned to leave the study. Pausing at the door, I waited. Lucius spoke. Happy wedding, Eli. Protect Lynn. That is my only and final request. My expression turned serious. I will. Thank you for your guidance and protection. The Pendragon family will never forget your kindness. I left, closing the door behind me. Lucius remained still, staring at the closed door. He smiled, his eyes crinkling, and sipped his now lukewarm tea. That brat. Unlike the quiet study, Lynn's room was brightly lit and bustling. The room was packed with people. Alongside her maids, several noble women from Thorn City were present. Lucius had invited them to assist the bride, and they were currently surrounding Lynn. With knowing smiles, they whispered intimate advice to her. Miss Lynn, remember, the look in your eyes must be. Lynn sat at her vanity, her face flushed deep red. She looked down, twisting her handkerchief, wishing she could disappear. She couldn't tell them she already knew all this, and had practiced it with me many times. It's amazing how much advice people give when they have no idea they're talking to a veteran. She feigned innocence. All right, that's enough talk. A countess joked, clapping her hands. Miss Lynn, try on the wedding dress. It was custom-made by the capital's best tailor over a month. Lynn looked at the shimmering white gown hanging on the rack. With a spark of anticipation, she stood up with the maid's help. Meanwhile, in the La Roche library, Irene sat with a priceless ancient text, her mind elsewhere. Her gaze was fixed on the page, but she hadn't turned it in ages. She could hear the faint, festive sounds of wedding preparations in the distance. He was getting married. The thought pricked at her heart, causing an inexplicable discomfort. Grand Sage Talaler sat in his chair, busy. With a flick of his finger, he kept Gulu tumbling in midair like a balloon. Hey, let me down, old man. I'm going to be sick, Gulu protested, though his small face remained defiant. Talaler chuckled, then looked at the distracted Irene. As a Grand Sage, he sensed her inner turmoil. He stopped teasing Gulu, letting the dizzy creature drop to the floor. He pulled out an old harmonica and began to play. The melody was haunting, like a breeze in the night-song forest or moonlight on a lake. At dawn, the first rays of sun pierced the morning mist. The massive bronze bell of the Thorn Cathedral, usually silent, began to toll. Clang, clang, clang. The deep, resonant sound echoed across Thorn City, signaling a historic event. Today, the bell rang for a wedding, signaling its immense political and symbolic importance to the western border and the kingdom. As the bells rang, the entire city seemed to erupt with excitement. The main banquet hall of La Roche Castle was undoubtedly the most bustling hub in Thorn City and the entire western border today. Nearly every prominent noble from the west was present, joined by delegations from the Southern Territory and the Royal Territory. Wealthy merchants and minor nobles, lacking formal invitations, paid fortunes just to secure entry into the outer halls. Even a glimpse of the event was enough to provide them with bragging rights in their social circles for years to come, as if seeing a wedding cake somehow improved their own pedigree. The hall was decorated with extreme luxury. Massive crystal chandeliers and thousands of scented candles illuminated the space, filling the air with the fragrance of ambergris and fresh flowers. Long tables, draped in snow-white silk, groaned under the weight of endless delicacies. Offerings ranged from rare deep-sea caviar to golden-roasted suckling pigs. Exotic fruits from the midsummer islands and decades-old vintage wines from the west were displayed in overwhelming abundance. Uniformed servants wove through the crowd, attending to every guest's whim. The hall was packed with nobles in exquisite formal wear, their family crests displayed proudly as they discussed politics and business. Noble women in the latest fashion whispered behind feathered fans. Their eyes darted between the young bachelors and critiqued the jewelry of other ladies. At the center stood a youth in a gold-trimmed suit, his collar embroidered with the golden lion crest. This was Constantine Laroche, the future Duke of the West, maintaining a professional smile as he greeted waves of nobles, a strict mandate from Lucius Laroche. Constantine had to project the poise and presence expected of a Laroche heir before the kingdom's elite. Unable to defy his uncle, he forced his stiff smile to remain in place, though my face was beginning to cramp into a permanent grimace. "Good day, Lord Constantine." A rotund count pushed forward, raising his glass in a toast. "It has been too long. You look more like Duke Federico every day." Constantine quickly recalled the man's identity and bowed slightly. "Good day, Count Potter. You look radiant yourself. The harvest in your territory must be bountiful." Flattered that the young duke remembered him, the count beamed and nodded vigorously. After dismissing the count, a tall noble approached. Constantine's smile became more genuine. "Good day, Sir Solon Winterborn. Laroche Castle welcomes you. I heard of your heroic performance in the recent reconquest. You are the pride of the Winterborn family." Solon shook his head modestly. "Compared to today's groom, my minor contributions are not worth mentioning." Constantine groaned inwardly as he continued the charade. He wondered how much longer this endless cycle of pleasantries would last. As the crowd grew, a loud, resonant bell tolled, a signal. The orchestra conductor raised his baton, and the musicians struck up a lively traditional Western tune. Violins, flutes, and cellos blended into a festive, joyous melody. Constantine nearly cheered aloud at the music. The start of the dance meant he was finally free to leave, assuming I didn't get cornered by another enthusiast of small talk. With a sense of reprieve, he bowed to the nearby nobles and retreated toward the spiral staircase leading to the second floor. The second-floor gallery and private boxes were reserved for high-ranking nobles and core family members. It offered a clear view of the hall while maintaining a sense of seclusion. The festive music pushed the banquet's atmosphere to a climax. Nobles turned to their partners. "Beautiful lady, may I have this dance?" "It would be my honor." The dance floor filled with swirling skirts and laughter as the guests celebrated. The hall was filled with joy, as if the shadows of war had vanished. As the music faded, the dancers paused to catch their breath. Just then, an elderly man in deep red velvet, his chest covered in medals, stepped onto a raised circular platform. It was Count Habii, his white beard groomed, wearing his signature smile. The nobles below and the high-ranking guests on the second floor chuckled warmly. No wonder we hadn't seen old Habii earlier. Haha, it's smiling turtle Habii. Lucius must have tasked him with the opening. The old man still loves the spotlight. Though not the highest ranking, Habii was a veteran of the West. Known for his tact and popularity, he maintained good relations with all major families. Habii stood on the platform, having personally requested this duty from Lucius. He cleared his throat, his expression turning solemn. "Everyone, silence." The hall quieted instantly. Habii looked around, his voice booming. "Everyone rise. Face the golden lion." The nobles stood without hesitation. Even the marquises and family confidants on the second floor set down their drinks and stood respectfully. They turned toward the massive banner, slowly descending in the center of the hall. It was the red and gold lion flag. The golden lion seemed to come alive in the torchlight, roaring down at the assembly. It was the symbol of the West and the glory of the Laroche family. Habii's voice grew passionate. "My friends, since the era of the great Roderick Laroche, our western border has stood against the endless wilderness and the barbarians. We have endured blood and iron. Our walls are built from the bones of our enemies, our land watered by the blood of our ancestors. Our forebears never laid down their swords, nor did they abandon our honor." The crowd stirred, their blood boiling. Habii clenched his fist, his voice rising. "And just recently, those wretched Federation curs, those treacherous thieves, they tore up our treaties, breached our cities, occupied our lands, and slaughtered our people. They dared trample our sacred Thorn City with their filthy hooves. This is an unprecedented humiliation for the West. Shame must be washed away with blood, which is why we launched a counterattack under Lucius's leadership. We slaughtered the Federation pups, hung their heads on our walls, and soaked the lands of Storm City and the West with their blood. We have reclaimed our ancestors' glory." The crowd erupted. Nobles who had lost family and land roared with fervor. Count Habii shouted. La Roche, supreme might. The slogan ignited the hall. La Roche, supreme might. The nobles chanted in unison, their voices shaking the crystal chandeliers. Every Western noble cast aside their usual pretenses and petty rivalries. They roared the slogan, a display of Western unity and power. Visiting merchants and foreign nobles watched in utter shock at the raw, fanatical intensity. They exchanged terrified glances. Was this the legendary, martial-obsessed West? The sheer cohesion and bloodlust were suffocating. The envoy from the Eastern Territory stood in a corner on the second floor, his expression grave. He wiped cold sweat from his brow. The West was far more formidable than the Duke had anticipated. Habii signaled for silence and pointed to the grand doors. In this great war, one young hero stood tall. At the most critical moment of the defense of Thorn, I stood alone with my sword to turn the tide. In the subsequent campaigns, I led the charge, raided Kyle, liberated Manta, and fought through Storm City, earning immense glory for the West. I am now hailed as the hero of the West. Habii shouted. I am. Thousands of eyes locked onto the doors. The crowd joined Habii in shouting the name that now echoed across the West. Eli Black. The doors boomed open amidst thunderous cheers. A tall figure with shimmering white hair stepped into view. I wore a tailored white suit adorned with the Pendragon Black Dragon emblem in gold thread. The black, white, and gold ensemble balanced aristocratic elegance with a warrior's edge. Pendragon, the crowd chanted. The white-haired god of war. Noble women gazed at me with fervent admiration. Many whispered regrets about not meeting this rising star sooner. I walked steadily toward the red-carpeted stage, trying to look like I hadn't spent the last hour worrying about whether my cape would trip me. I bowed slightly to the dignitaries, showing neither arrogance nor unease. Thank you all for coming. My voice carried clearly across the hall. As cheers subsided, Habii beamed. Everyone, compose yourselves. We now welcome the brightest jewel of the feast, the pride of the La Roche family. Let us applaud the beautiful Miss Lynn Aurora, and our esteemed Western governor, brother to Duke Federico, Sir Lucius La Roche. Habii's announcement concluded. For Golden Lion Knights pushed the massive golden doors open. Sir Lucius entered in a formal black suit, wearing the Golden Lion medal of the Western governor, his expression stern and majestic. Yet, all eyes bypassed the powerful man to fixate on the woman on his arm. A collective gasp filled the hall. She wore a wedding gown crafted by the capital's finest, its layers blooming like a white rose. Adorned with diamonds and pearls, she looked as if she were draped in the galaxy. Her white hair was pinned up, crowned with a delicate mithril tiara. A massive sapphire at the center of the tiara deepened the allure of her blue eyes. Her skin was as white as snow, glowing like ivory under the lights. Her breathtaking beauty left the crowd stunned, almost afraid to look directly at her. A goddess, a young baron whispered. Even I, standing on the stage, held my breath. I watched her walk toward me on the red carpet. The surrounding noise faded. My gaze softened with deep affection. Lynn felt my intense, focused stare and gripped Lucius's arm nervously. But as she met my gentle eyes, her tension vanished. A happy smile bloomed on her lips. Her smile melted the ice, leaving everyone mesmerized. She looked at the white-haired man waiting for her, her hero, her harbor in this chaotic world. In private, she might have rushed into my arms, but here, she restrained herself, which was probably for the best, given the structural integrity of this stage. She walked toward me with elegant determination. Even Lucius's usually cold face softened with emotion. He led Lynn through the crowd and up to the stage, stopping before me. They stood a single step apart. Lucius placed Lynn's gloved hand into my palm. I gripped it firmly. The crowd erupted again, cheering for the epic, king and queen-like pair. Lucius stepped forward, signaling for silence with a wave. He scanned the crowd and spoke calmly. Thank you for coming. Count Habii has already stolen all the flowery words I intended to say. He glanced at Habii with a rare, humorous smirk. So, I will spare you the lecture. The crowd laughed, the atmosphere lightening. No one expected the stern Lucius to make such a joke. It was almost enough to make me check for signs of the apocalypse. Lucius turned to me and Lynn. I will say only this. Let us bless this couple. Happy wedding. The crowd echoed the sentiment. The music shifted to the solemn, sacred hymns of the Thorn Cathedral Choir. The doors opened again as clergy entered, led by the red-robed Archbishop Timmy, holding a golden staff. The nobles straightened their attire, their expressions turning somber. In the Orlando Kingdom, the Church of Light held an unshakable, sacred status. A marriage without the Church's blessing was considered incomplete. Archbishop Timmy approached the stage, greeted the guests, and turned to the couple. Under the gaze of the light and the witnesses of the West, we gather to witness a sacred covenant forged in snow and fire. He opened his scripture and looked at me. Viscount Eli Black, hero of the West, you have walked the desolate borders, shattered darkness with your sword, and protected the people with your wisdom. I ask you today, when the armor is shed and the sword is sheathed, are you willing to accept Lynn Aurora as your soulmate and only wife? Whether in prosperity or in peace. Are you willing to swear by your honor as a knight to be her strongest shield and her eternal lighthouse? To cherish and remain loyal to her with your life, until the stars fall and your breath ceases? I gripped Lynn's hand, locking eyes with her. I do, I replied firmly. Lynn's eyes welled with happy tears. Cardinal Timmy turned to her. Miss Lynn Aurora, noble and resilient as a white orchid. You knew him in his humble beginnings and offered him your trust in the wasteland. I ask you now, are you willing to accept Eli Black as your lawful husband and sole support? Whether he is a hero revered by all or a weary traveler, whether in wealth or poverty, health or sickness, will you share his glory and burdens, offering him your trust and tenderness through every dawn and dusk? Lynn, looking at the man etched into her soul, choked out, I do. The crowd teared up. Cardinal Timmy closed his scripture, touched his staff to their joined hands, and declared, by the authority of the Church of Light, I pronounce you husband and wife. May the grace of light forever shroud the Pendragon and LaRoche families, and may your union be as unyielding as rock and as eternal as the stars. As the cardinal finished, the hall erupted in thunderous cheers. Long live Pendragon! Long live LaRoche! Streamers rained down like colorful confetti. The orchestra struck up a triumphant melody, immersing everyone in the joyous celebration. Amidst the cheers, I leaned in to kiss my bride. Lynn closed her eyes, a tear of joy falling. Suddenly, a faint green light appeared above the dome, a single leaf drifting slowly downward. All eyes were drawn to the mysterious, glowing leaf. I had a sinking feeling that the festivities were about to be interrupted by something far less romantic than a wedding kiss. The cheering faltered. Amidst the celebration of light, a messenger of nature had arrived. Thousands of eyes focused on the seemingly ordinary green leaf. It was both extraordinary and mundane. What is that? A countess whispered behind her fan to her husband. A glowing leaf? Her husband frowned. How could there be fresh foliage in this season? Sir Lucius, head of the LaRoche family, turned grim. He recognized the sign of the elves, the children of nature. His heart tightened. The magic tide was rising. What did this sudden appearance mean during the LaRoche family's most critical moment? Was it a signal of vengeance from the long-hidden elves, or a silent curse? Lucius prepared to intervene to protect the wedding. Before he could move, I leaped gracefully into the air, catching the leaf. I landed with a composed smile. In a bold move, I ignored the stunned crowd. I turned to Lynn and tucked the emerald leaf into her mithril crown. The vibrant green added a touch of life to the cold, luxurious mithril and gemstones. This is... Lynn blinked, confused. I raised our joined hands. Do not be alarmed. This is a blessing and gift from the goddess of life. It is an omen of good fortune. My voice was steady and confident. As I spoke, my gaze swept the crowd, lingering briefly on a shadow in the corner. It appeared empty, but I sensed a familiar, elegant presence standing there. It was Queen Irene. She watched the couple, her clear eyes filled with complex emotions. She saw me place the leaf of the sacred tree, the highest elven blessing, on another woman's head. She watched the human woman, Lynn Aurora, beam with happiness. As an elven queen, she felt an indescribable, stinging discomfort. Sour and lost, she rubbed the ring on her finger. Is this love? She wondered. She had always prioritized her race's revival, never confronting her feelings for this human. Even the grand sage's prophecy had only brought her confusion and anger. But seeing him belong to another, the pain forced her to admit she held deep, undefined feelings for me. However, she took a breath, her gaze turning cold and proud again. She was an elven queen. Her pride forbade self-pity or sabotage. I will die by your hand. Humph. My fate is my own, not yours, Eli Black. She took one last look and vanished into the air. Below, the nobles were skeptical, but Cardinal Timmy acted quickly. The old fox immediately grasped my intent. He stepped forward, staff in hand. Praise the light, and praise life. Viscount Pendragon speaks the truth. In ancient texts, when a supreme vow is sworn, all things gain spirit. This leaf holds pure, powerful life energy. It is no evil sorcery. The goddess of life herself is moved by this love, bestowing this vitality upon our celebration. It is a miracle, a true miracle. The cardinal's words shattered all doubt. In the Orlando Kingdom, the Church of Light held absolute authority. Furthermore, clergy were strictly forbidden from lying in the name of God. Since Cardinal Timmy endorsed it as a miracle, who would dare doubt? I suppose miracles are easy to come by when you're the one holding the microphone. The stagnant atmosphere exploded into excitement. A miracle, a blessing from the goddess of life. Incredible, an omen of prosperity for the West. The nobles shifted from suspicion to awe. To receive blessings from both the light and life deities at one wedding was a legend in the making. Seeing the situation perfectly contained, Sir Lucius exhaled, relieved. He shot me an appreciative look, regained his composure, and stepped forward, arms wide. Everyone, since the gods themselves have blessed this couple, how can we mortals fail to enjoy this moment? I declare the banquet open. Let the feast begin. The time is yours. Cheers erupted once more. At Lucius's command, the LaRoche servants flooded the hall like a tide. Servants carried silver platters laden with delicacies. The hungry guests abandoned their decorum, taking their seats or mingling with wine glasses in hand. They savored the rare feast while eagerly discussing the shocking events that had just unfolded. This is the most grand and unforgettable wedding I have ever attended. The banquet hall was immersed in an ocean of joy and harmony. Seeing the matter resolved, Lucius LaRoche glanced at me and Lynn, who were receiving blessings, and nodded gently. He did not linger in the main hall. For a man of his standing, the true banquet happened away from the noisy public eye. He gave a slight nod to Archbishop Timmy Gabriel. Escorted by his personal guards, he headed toward the private boxes on the second floor reserved for the elite. It was a more intimate and significant gathering. On the platform, I held Lynn's hand and turned to the Archbishop. Archbishop Timmy, thank you for earlier. I knew that without the Archbishop's timely explanation, my own words would not have dispelled the crowd's doubts, potentially bringing scandal to the LaRoche family. Lynn, quick-witted, lifted her skirt and bowed slightly to the Archbishop. Thank you, Your Excellency. May the light protect you. Archbishop Timmy looked at the couple with his usual gentle, kind smile. However, his gaze bypassed the radiant Lynn and fixed intently on me. I felt unnerved by the intensity of the stare. No, Viscount, Lady Lynn, you are too kind. It is my honor to serve you and witness this miracle. It is the guidance of the light. The priests behind the Archbishop exchanged surprised glances. Usually, even before Sir Lucius or Duke Federico, the Archbishop maintained a professional distance. Today, toward the promising young Viscount Pendragon, he seemed overly humble. You are too generous, Archbishop, I replied, maintaining my composure despite my confusion. The Archbishop, sensing his own unusual behavior, reined himself in. Viscount Eli, if you have time, would you visit Thorn Cathedral again? Another invitation? The Archbishop had shown great interest in me during our last meeting. I was starting to feel less like a guest and more like a potential hobby. Having received such a favor, I knew I had to reciprocate. Of course, I shall visit and seek your counsel. The Archbishop's smile widened. I shall await your arrival at the cathedral. He bowed once more and departed with his bewildered priests. As the red robes vanished, I turned to my wife. She was truly beautiful. I pulled her into a tight embrace. I leaned in, whispering into her ear, my warm breath making her tremble. The rest of the time belongs to us. Lynn buried her face in my chest, listening to my heartbeat. Unexpectedly, the shy girl wrapped her arms around my neck. Eli. Yes. Actually, I saw it. I stiffened. Saw what? Lynn looked up with a playful glint in her blue eyes. In the corner. That was the elf princess, wasn't it? And the leaf? She gave it to you, right? Though she lacked magic, a woman's intuition was often more precise than any detection spell. It's a terrifying evolutionary advantage, really. I groaned internally at her sharp eyes, but remained calm. What elf princess? I swept her up into my arms. Lynn gasped, clutching my neck. I strode toward the back, leaving the crowd behind. I only know. We have more important business to attend to, my lady. Lynn blushed and hid her face in my chest, holding me tighter. Amidst the city's festivities, our time together had just begun. In the Northern Territory, Herringard, the city of beginning and end in the ancient local dialect. It sat on the northernmost ice plains of the Orlando Kingdom, backed by the spine of winter, a mountain range that seemed to bridge heaven and earth. It was the gateway to the north and the first, most formidable line of defense against polar storms. This winter had arrived early and with biting cold. Snow had fallen for 3 days and nights, burying the world in white. Howling winds tore through the black walls like a beast, and snow whipped like blades. In this weather, where even snow wolves hid, a secretive, flagless convoy appeared before the heavy gates of Herringard. The group was small, 3 reinforced, felt-covered carriages, and 20 heavily armed knights. Despite the cold, the knights stood tall, their cloaks snapping in the wind. With hands on their hilts and vigilant eyes, they displayed elite military discipline. The lead knight rode forward and shouted to the guards, "Open the gates. We have urgent business with Duke Raymond Olaf." A soldier with a frostbitten face leaned over the wall. "Who are you? Don't you know Herringard is under lockdown? If you want shelter, go back to the southern villages. We don't take stragglers." The lead knight frowned, displeased by the rudeness. He pulled out a metal badge, channeled his battle chi, and shouted, "Open your eyes. This is the Silver Moon Badge, the token of the Duke of the East, the great Russell family. We are an envoy representing the Duke. Open the gate." However, the soldier was a blockhead. He scratched his frozen ear, looked blankly at the badge, and muttered, "Silver Moon? Russell? Never heard of them." He shouted down again, "Can't you hear? I asked who you are. Why are you showing me scrap metal? Without a pass, no one gets in, not even the king. Get lost, or I'll start shooting." "You." The lead knight nearly fell off his horse in rage. As a captain of the Eastern Duke's Guard, he was usually treated as an honored guest. To be insulted by an illiterate bumpkin in this godforsaken north was unbearable. Scrap metal? That was the crest of one of the 4 great dukes of the kingdom. He prepared to assert his authority and perhaps use force to intimidate the locals. Just then, a commotion broke out on the wall. An officer as burly as a brown bear strode over. Without a word, he kicked the soldier in the rear with his iron boot. Thud! Ouch! Who kicked me? The soldier cried, rolling in the snow. "You blind idiot," the officer cursed. "That's the crest of the Russell family. These are the Duke's honored guests. You dare block them? Do you want to mine ice for the rest of your life?" The officer turned to the knights below with a forced, friendly smile. "Listen, I am Rolf, the Southgate commander. Lord Thor Olaf ordered us to let anyone with the Silver Moon Badge pass immediately. Ignore my subordinate's ignorance. We are opening the gates now." He waved his hand. "Open the gates." With the groan of heavy winches, the ironclad gate creaked open amidst the snow. The lead knight finally let out a sigh of relief. I rode to the most luxurious carriage and whispered a report through the window. A pair of deep eyes appeared behind the curtain, nodding slightly. "Enter the city." The convoy moved into Herringard, a city resembling a dormant beast amidst the howling blizzard. Inside, the wind intensified. The city, built of massive, rugged black rock, exuded a cold, martial atmosphere. Rolf awaited them at the gate. "Follow me," he commanded bluntly. "Lord Thor ordered me to take you to your quarters." The convoy traversed half the city before stopping at a stone house on the edge of the inner city. It was cozy, provided your definition of cozy included drafty stone walls and the distinct feeling of being watched by a garrison. The building was sturdy but primitive. As the Eastern delegation disembarked, their expressions soured at the sight of their lodging. A young official in silk robes pulled his fox fur tighter, complaining at the sight of the humble structure. We represent the Duke of the East. Is this the hospitality of the Olaf family? Rolf scratched his head, confused. What's wrong? It's warm inside. I didn't leave you out in the cold. There's a fire burning inside. Don't be so picky. The young official was left speechless, red with indignation. A calm, authoritative voice interrupted. Enough. Andrew, stand down. The carriage door opened, and a middle-aged man in a white cloak stepped out. He was about 50, with graying temples and a calm, composed demeanor. This was Marquis Vesa Moriarty, leader of the secret Eastern delegation. Marquis Vesa was a controversial figure in the kingdom's nobility. He was mockingly dubbed the Marquis of No Victories. Throughout his long career, he had never achieved a decisive, crushing victory. Overly cautious, he often retreated at the first sign of risk, even when holding the advantage. While young officers despised his perceived cowardice, Duke Russell knew the truth. The Marquis of No Victories had never suffered a defeat. In an unpredictable world, his ability to remain undefeated was a terrifying asset. Duke Russell chose him for this mission, precisely for his unmatched stability and caution. Furthermore, the Moriarty and Olaf families shared distant blood ties through past marriages. Vesa smiled at Rolf, showing no disdain. Thank you for the arrangements. When will Lord Thor see us? Rolf blinked. I've sent word. He's at the training grounds. Go inside and warm up. I'll bring food. Rolf walked away, muttering, Southerners are so troublesome and fussy. His voice was clear enough for the high-ranking knights in the delegation to hear. The delegation stood stunned in the snow. To the Northerners, anyone south of the Dragon Breath Mountains was considered weak and apparently prone to complaining about the lack of central heating. The group exchanged bitter smiles. Well, when in Rome, Vesa chuckled. I've truly witnessed the directness of the North. Let's go in. He led them into the stone house. The interior was sparse, furnished only with rough wooden tables and benches. However, a massive fire in the central pit immediately chased away the chill. After half an hour of deliberation, the door opened. Rolf returned with food, accompanied by a tall young man in a heavy wolfskin cloak.